Chapter 130. Rare Drafts. Mu Yang's eyes slightly brighten and she sits up straight. Tell me about it. Yu Yang quickly tells her about the drafts that might appear at the auction 3 days later. Mu Yang has found many of them in the fog forest, but there are fewer and fewer of them nowadays. There are also some that Mu Yang hasn't found yet. Miss Jun, would you be willing to do us the honor of attending? Of course. Mu Yang picks up the teacup and drains it in one gulp, smiling sincerely. Many thanks for the information, miss. In 3 days, I will certainly attend the auction on time. 3 days later. Mu Yang goes to the entrance of the ghost city alone, leaving Yang Haotian to help out at the Junji drugstore. As usual, there's still a long queue at the entrance of the ghost city. Mu Yang is just about to pay the 100 gold coin entrance fee when she sees a middle-aged man dressed in a ghost envoy's attire rushing out. With a face full of smiles, he says to Mu Yang, "This must be Miss Jun? This one is the ghost envoy Luo Fei. I've long heard of your great name." Seeing that Mu Yang is taking out 100 gold coins to pay the entrance fee, Luo Fei immediately flatters. "Miss Jun, you're an honored guest of our ghost city. You're free to come and go. There's no need to pay any entrance fee." Mu Yang glances at him and says with a smile that isn't a smile, "No need, I'm most afraid of trouble. Following the rules has always been the simplest thing, isn't it?" After saying that, she casually tossed the 100 gold coins into the money box. Luo Fei's complexion changes, then he immediately nods again and again. "Miss Jun is right. Your Junji drugstore is now famous in Xi'an for abiding by the rules. Also, your filter of barrier breaking allowed our ghost cities Yu Yang and Old Dao to break through their bottlenecks. Now, it's the hottest draft in our ghost city." Saying that, his eyes reveal a greedy and blazing light. "This one has been stuck in the middle of the earth stage for a long time. If I could ask Miss Jun to refine a bottle of the filter of barrier breaking, that would really be." But before Luo Fei could finish, Mu Yang interrupts him. "If I remember correctly, the one who received me today should be Miss Yu Yang, right?" Mu Yang's words didn't make it clear, but when she looked at Luo Fei with disdain, it made Luo Fei's face twist. He clenched his teeth and suppressed his anger. Yu Yang is only a 3rd-rank ghost errand boy, and I am already a 4th-rank ghost errand boy. The implication is that his status in the ghost city is much higher than Fang Yang's. For him to personally receive her, Mu Yan should be deeply grateful. But Mu Yang just smiled and said lightly, "Oh, is that so? That manager of the ghost city really has no foresight." After saying that, she brushes past Luo Fei and enters the ghost city. Luo Fei was left standing where he was, staring at her back with a dark look in his eyes. The ghost city's auction house is adjacent to the beast-fighting coliseum. At this time, Mu Yang was sitting in a private room on the 3rd floor. She could faintly hear the earth-shattering shouts coming from the coliseum next door. On the other hand, the auction house was much quieter and more refined. On the stage, a beautiful and alluring girl, whose appearance is comparable to Yu Yang's, presents the drafts that will be auctioned one by one in front of everyone. Listening to the rising and falling voices of the people below, Mu Yang is somewhat lacking in interest. That's because the drafts that were auctioned earlier were things that she could easily pick up in the fog forest. Chapter 131. Her fingers gently caress the jade bracelet on her wrist, and a trace of annoyance flits through her eyes. That day when Jin Wangye proposed marriage, Di Mingju inexplicably put this white jade bracelet on her, and she took it off as soon as she turned her head. But who knew that on the 3rd day, when that guy found out that she didn't wear it, he actually flew into a rage, and even had an appearance of being greatly wronged. Soon after, she couldn't take this jade bracelet off her wrist anymore. Recalling the man's overbearing, stubborn, and insufferably arrogant expression, Mu Yan can't help but brush her forehead. As she's thinking, a white light suddenly flashes before her eyes. A white, fluffy, and plump rabbit appears in front of her. Mu Yan raises her eyebrows. "Yo, a lazy rabbit like you also has a day where you can come out for a walk." The fat rabbit is still very tactful. It knows that this is the little master's mother, the person who holds the power over its life and death. Thus, it sticks out its little tongue to curry favor, licking Mu Yan's fingers, and rubbing its plump, fluffy body against her. "Well, if that's the case, Then moving its body can be considered rubbing. I haven't seen it for a few days, how come this rabbit seems to be fatter? Casually trying to curry favor with Muyan, the rabbit's round little mung-bin eyes immediately stare in one direction, and there's a greedy and longing glint in its eyes. Its fluffy little mouth is slightly open, and there seems to be drool flowing down. Muyan is just wondering about this little guy's reaction, when she sees the fat rabbit hopping on its hind legs and directly scurrying out. The direction it's heading towards is still the back window of the private room. Wait, over the back window, that's the beast fighting Colosseum. What does the fat rabbit want to do? Muyan's eyes and hands are quick, and she promptly grabs the fat rabbit back. The fat rabbit is so anxious that its 4 short legs are flailing about, and that round belly actually makes rumbling sounds. Huh! This is hungry. Could it be that there's food here that the fat rabbit would like? Just as she's thinking, the voice of the beautiful ghost envoy comes from below. The starting auction is for purple danshan, starting price, 10,000 gold coins. Hearing the 3 words purple danshan, Muyan's spirit immediately shakes, and she promptly prepares to bid. Although she still has purple danshan in her space, there aren't many left. In the split second that she's distracted, the fat rabbit immediately breaks away from her control and jumps out of the window. TSK. Muyan frowns. The back window was the Beast Colosseum. There were either bloodthirsty and berserk martial artists there, or savage exotic beasts 100 times bigger than the fat rabbit. If the fat rabbit went there, it wouldn't be eaten as food, right? However, thinking that the fat rabbit can even swallow and digest the sacred beast egg, Muyan's heart still goes back to her stomach. Purple Pill Ginseng, the guest in the first private room, bids 20,000 gold coins. The 2-hour auction quickly came to an end. Muyan stood up with a smile and stretched. She's very satisfied with today's harvest. In the prescriptions that Bailey Yinlu left behind, there are quite a few kinds of drafts that are as rare as the filter of barrier breaking. She really wants to try to concoct them, but she suffers from not having enough medicinal herbs. Now, she had finally collected most of these rare medicinal herbs. However, just as Muyan is about to pay the gold coins and receive the drafts, she sees a first-stage ghost envoy walking towards her. He respectfully salutes Muyan. Miss Jun, our Ghost City's Magistrate Shu invites you. In the Ghost City, there are ghost envoys from 1st to 5th rank. Judges of the 5th level and above were considered infernal judges. Chapter 132. Above the Ghost King is the person in charge of all the ghost markets in Yenwu continent, the Ghost Emperor. But she heard that a long, long time ago, there was an even higher level above the Ghost Emperor, a supreme existence. He was called the Dark Lord. However, it is said that apart from the first generation of the Ghost City, no one has ever seen the Dark Lord again. And a Ghost City's magistrate is already a very high level. For example, in Xi'an's Ghost City, that magistrate is equivalent to an existence that can call the wind and summon the rain. And now, such an existence that can call the wind and summon the rain specially summons her. She doesn't know what his intentions are. The corner of Muyan's mouth hooks up into a leisurely arc, and she leisurely follows the little ghost envoy to a luxurious room. There's no one in the room, but Muyan doesn't feel the slightest bit awkward or uncomfortable. Minding her own business, she sits down, pours herself a cup of tea, and slowly drinks it. Miss Jun is really young and promising. With outstanding courage and insight, a deep voice suddenly comes from outside the door. Immediately after, the door is pushed open, and several people enter in a line. The leader is an old man. His hair and beard are all white, but his skin is smooth and tight. If you don't look at his hair color, he looks to be in his 40s at most. He looks at Muyan with a pair of tiger-like eyes, and says with a solemn smile, Miss Jun is so at ease to eat and drink at this old man's place. Aren't you afraid that this old man will poison your tea? Muyan raises her eyebrows and glances at him. Her posture is still languidly sitting on the chair, without the slightest intention of getting up to greet him. A sweet-sounding voice leisurely rings out, Ghost City's Magistrate Shu, you shouldn't use such a despicable method like poisoning and sneak attacking, right? What kind of attitude is this? Luo Fei, who is following behind Magistrate Shu, suddenly becomes angry from shame, and shouts loudly, do you know who is standing in front of you? This is our ghost city's magistrate Shu. Even if it's the city lord, or even the heads of influential families, in Xi'an, who wouldn't be respectful and fawning when they see Magistrate Shu? And as Magistrate Shu's apprentice, Luo Fei has always been respected. When has he ever suffered such vexation in front of Muyan? Muyan gives him a sidelong glance, and sneers. This ghost envoy Luo Fei, is there something wrong with your brain? Didn't I just greet Magistrate Shu? Do I need you to repeat yourself? If you don't have a good brain, then don't work in the ghost city, so as to avoid making a fool of yourself and losing face for the entire ghost city. You bitch, I'm going to kill you. Luo Fei was finally angered by her. Raising his fist, he circulated his profound qi and was about to smash it towards her. Luo Fei, come back. Don't be rude to Miss Jun. Magistrate Shu let out a loud shout, and the powerful pressure of an innate rancor filled the air. Luo Fei, who had just rushed out, staggered and fell to the ground. The other ghost envoys who followed him in were also shivering, their faces pale. Only Mu Yang, who is sitting at the table, is still smiling and leisurely sipping tea. Shock and amazement flashed through Magistrate Shu's eyes, then he took a big step forward and sat in front of her. This old man has lived for so long, but has never seen such a young Xiantian expert like Miss June. Not only was he an innate rancor, but he was also an apothecary who could concoct heaven-defying medicine. Miss Jun's talent really makes this old man gasp in admiration. Even in the 1,000 years of history of my ghost city, there has never been a record of a person as talented as Miss June. Chapter 133. You woman, you're really shameless. Luo Fei couldn't help but curse again. Magistrate Shu fiercely glares at him, and he immediately bitterly retreats. Magistrate Shu looks at Muyan with a burning gaze, lowering his voice. Miss Jun misunderstood, our ghost city doesn't buy drafts. Oh, don't buy drafts? Then what does Magistrate Shu want me to do by keeping me here? Magistrate Shu picks up the teacup in front of him and takes a sip, then slowly puts it down. On behalf of Ghost City, I would like to invite Miss Jun to become our exclusive alchemist. As compensation, I am willing to promise Miss Jun the title and position of a rank 5 ghost envoy. Miss Jun is so intelligent and talented at such a young age. I believe that you should know how much benefit you can get from becoming a rank 5 ghost envoy. Rank 5 ghost envoy? That is indeed a great benefit. Even in the entire ghost city of Xi'an, there are only a dozen or so rank 5 ghost envoys. Moreover, every one of them is promoted step by accumulating merits. After becoming a rank 5 ghost envoy, all the treasures in the ghost city can be bought at half price. Moreover, they have the power to buy and sell the slaves in Wan Renku. Hearing Magistrate Shu's promise, Luo Fei's eyes turn red with jealousy. He has a deep background, and is also Magistrate Shu's apprentice. After 30 years, he's only a rank 4 ghost envoy. But Muyan is a rank 5 ghost envoy. A little girl whose hair hasn't even fully grown, how can she step on his head? Muyan's expression doesn't even change when she hears that. She strolls around and says, "Oh, rank 5 ghost envoy, that sounds really good. But what if I don't agree?" Her words make Magistrate Shu's face suddenly turn cold. His voice also becomes gloomy, like a real magistrate of the underworld. Miss Jun, do you really think that you can run amok in the world and be invincible just because you're a pre-celestial expert? Pre-celestial experts may be really rare outside, but in our ghost city, they're nothing more than a useful tool in our hands. If you're willing to be obedient, then the ghost city will naturally give you enough power and wealth. But if you're stubborn and insist on going against the ghost city, then your fate will only be more miserable than those casually trampled slaves in Wan Renku. Muyan narrows her eyes, her expression still languid, but her body reveals a languid aura. She hated it when people threatened her. However, Luo Fei had long felt indignant when he saw her arrogant look. Now that she saw that Magistrate Shu wanted to fall out with her, she immediately felt incomparably carefree in her heart. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Jun Muyan, I've checked. You shameless whore, you don't have a husband, but you have a son. That little bastard, I don't know which wild man you had illicit relations with to give birth to him. If you really want to go against our ghost city, not only will you be sold to Wan Renku, even your son won't have a good end. I know that there are many high-level martial artists and wealthy families who love to play with those beautiful children. I've seen that son of yours. He's so handsome, it really makes one's heart flutter. He believed that if it was auctioned in 10,000 cave, it would definitely sell for a good price. Ha ha ha. Ah. Before Luo Fei could finish speaking, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his throat, and his whole body was lifted up. Chapter 134. At this time, Muyan's expression is still incomparably calm, there's even a charming smile hanging on the corner of her mouth. But her pair of eyes that are usually half-squinted, full of charm and laziness, are now completely open. Her eyes are blood-red, blazing like fire, as if it could burn everything in the world. Xiao Bao is Muyan's reverse scale, no one can touch it. Whoever touches it, will die. No one could have expected this turn of events. Even Magistrate Shu is caught off guard. By the time he comes back to his senses, Muyan is already clutching Luo Fei's throat. Magistrate Shu roars, "Jun Muyan, you dare to injure people in my ghost city, do you really not want to live anymore?" Luo Fei's neck is clutched, his face flushes purple, his eyes are filled with panic. He opens his mouth wide and lets out a hoarse and broken voice, save me. Let me go, kill me, you won't live either, you wouldn't dare to kill me. If you kill me, you won't be able to walk out alive." Although he's panicking, although he's in pain, Luo Fei firmly believes that Muyan wouldn't dare to kill him. Then, he sees the girl's smile, as bright as a spring flower, brighter and more beautiful than the sun. The 5 fingers on his neck suddenly tighten. There's only a cracking sound, Luo Fei's neck is crooked, and he completely loses his breath. "Jun Muyan, you dare." Magistrate Shu lets out a heart-wrenching, lung-splitting roar, and ruthlessly swings his palm out. In a split second, internal force surges, and a terrifying pressure scatters in all directions. The surrounding tables, chairs, and benches are all smashed to pieces, smashed into a complete mess. All the ghost envoys are crawling on the ground, shivering, their complexions deathly pale. There's even a small rank 1 ghost envoy that overflows with blood at the corner of his mouth, his eyes roll back and he passes out. However, when the wind from the palm dissipates, Magistrate Shu looks again, only to find that the entire room is empty. Where's Jun Muyan's shadow? He's trembling with anger, almost going crazy. The ghost city has run amok in the Yenwu continent for so long, it's been rampant for so long. Who dares to disobey, who dares to resist? No one even dares to show the slightest bit of disrespect. But today, a little girl who was only 18 or 19 years old had killed his disciple right in front of him. How could he endure such a great humiliation? If Jun Muyan really escapes, then how would the ghost city still have the face to see people in the future? Pass down my order, stop all business in the ghost city, close the gates of the ghost city, no one is allowed to enter or leave. Gather all the magistrates and 5th-rank ghost envoys. Even if you have to turn the entire ghost city upside down, you must find that slut, Jun Muyan. There are a total of 5 pre-celestial practitioners in Xi'an, including Magistrate Shu. Moreover, each of them had entered the innate realm for several years, some even more than 10 years. Even if Jun Muyan is a pre-celestial expert, she's still only an 18 or 19-year-old girl. How could she contend against a colossus like the Ghost City? Her fate was already determined, and it would definitely be extremely miserable. Magistrate Shu issues all the orders, the crazed fury in his eyes slowly recedes, turning into bitter resentment and maliciousness. Jun Muyan, wait until you fall into this old man's hands, this old man will make you beg for death. At the same time, in the Colosseum, Magistrate Shu's orders have just been issued, but the last beast fighting competition hasn't ended yet. Roar tilde 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 tilde, a shocking roar, a majestic pressure surges forth like a tide. Chapter 135. Several people have already stood up and frantically shouted, cheering for the exotic beasts that they had bet on. On the stage, the 2 scarred exotic beasts are tearing at each other. In the end, it's the snow leopard with its sharp claws and agile agility that wins. And it's the red bear that's as big as a hill, able to smash a boulder with a single slap, that can stand in the end. These two are the Ghost City's Beast Fighting Colosseum's rare Heaven Stage exotic beasts. They're also the Colosseum's trump card. Even the ghost envoys that raise them must be rank 4 or above. Otherwise, if you're not careful, you'll become a side meal for these two Heaven Stage exotic beasts. Every time these two Heaven Stage exotic beasts appear on the stage, the scene is always exceptionally explosive. Not to mention that today, the Colosseum actually sent out both Heaven Stage exotic beasts. That's why today's spectators are so crazy. Blood, violence, cruelty, and slaughter, these are the things that the martial artists who come to the Colosseum are most eager to experience. Time passes by, minute by minute. More and more blood is flowing from the two Heaven Stage exotic beasts' bodies. Seeing that it's already the decisive moment, the martial artists in the stands are completely immersed, screaming hysterically at the top of their lungs. No one noticed that in the corner, there was a plump rabbit with snow-white fur. It was swaying as it walked towards the center of the war beast stage. Just as the rabbit is getting closer and closer to the two Heaven Stage exotic beasts. Suddenly, the two Heaven Stage exotic beasts seem to have felt something and abruptly separated. Their bodies curled up into a ball, their eyes revealing a look of alarm. What's going on? Why did they suddenly stop fighting? Hey! When did a rabbit appear on the war beast stage? Who threw it up there? Why do I feel that the two Heaven Stage exotic beasts are afraid of this rabbit? Are you kidding me? Those are Heaven Stage exotic beast. When they were fighting each other just now, they didn't have the slightest bit of fear. How could they be afraid of a rabbit now? However, as the fat rabbit staggers closer and closer, the performance of the two Heaven Stage exotic beasts is becoming more and more unimaginable. The crimson bear's enormous body lay prostrate on the ground, its fan-like palms hugging its head and burying it in the ground. Its tower-like body trembled uncontrollably. The snow leopard wasn't much better off. Its long tail was tightly clamped, and its blood-stained fur was standing on end. It bared its teeth at the fat rabbit, but it wasn't a threat. Instead, it was more like a roar of despair. Just as everyone was baffled, the fat rabbit walked to the middle of the two exotic beasts, and its mung-bin eyes lit up. Then, it opened its small mouth towards the red bear. Whoosh! It was as if a cool breeze had brushed past the Colosseum. Then, the tower-like red bear in front of everyone disappeared. The fat rabbit rolled over and touched its belly with its stubby paws. It was still flat. Thus, it turned around, faced the snow leopard, and opened its small mouth again. There was a deathly silence in the hall. After a few breaths, someone let out an earth-shattering scream. Disappeared, the two Heaven Stage beasts disappeared. What's going on? Where did the Heaven Stage beasts go? Why is it gone? Could it have been eaten by that rabbit? What kind of joke is this? How could a rabbit eat Heaven Stage beasts? Moreover, look at the size of those two Heaven Stage exotic beasts. If they were really eaten, where did the Heaven Stage beasts go? Chapter 136. The ghost envoys in the Beast Fighting Colosseum seem to come back to their senses at this time. Catch it, quickly catch it for me. The disappearance of the Heaven Stage strange beast must have something to do with this rabbit. We can't let it run away. A hint of panic flits through those round mung-bin eyes. Its short legs jump even faster. The fat rabbit's figure turns into a stream of light in a split second, scuttling back and forth in the crowd, trying to escape. However, there are too many people tracking it. There are 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, surrounding the fat rabbit tightly. Not long after, a ghost envoy pounces on the fat rabbit and lifts it up by the neck. Little bastard, let's see where you can run to now. No matter how you look at it, this bastard is just an ordinary rabbit. How could it possibly swallow a Heaven Stage strange beast? Mph. Whether it swallowed it or not, wouldn't we know once we cut open this little bastard's belly? Saying that, a dagger appears in the ghost envoy's hand that's holding the fat rabbit, and is about to slide it down the fat rabbit's bulging belly. However, the knife hasn't fallen yet. Suddenly, the sound of a zither buzzes in his ears. Immediately after, a sharp pain comes from the hand that's holding the knife, and the dagger falls to the ground in a flash. and the tendons in the hand that's holding the rabbit are directly cut off. The ghost envoy howls in pain, and he immediately loosens his grip on the rabbit. In a split second, the fat rabbit's figure turns into a stream of light, and with a whoosh, it scuttles into a familiar embrace. A whining sound comes from its throat, and its chubby body can't help but tremble because of the lingering fear. Strangely, the whining it makes doesn't sound like a rabbit at all, but more like a young and tender whine. Muyan hugs the little guy in her arms, smoothing its fur, and teasingly says, "Did you learn your lesson this time? Let's see if you still dare to run around in the future." The fat rabbit sticks out its tongue and licks her fingers. Then it turns over in her arms, and its fat belly comfortably rubs against her. Then it happily closes its eyes and goes to sleep. This dead rabbit. Muyan is speechless. In this world, is there a more useless, lazier spiritual pet than this fat rabbit? She really wants to just strangle this guy to death. "Who are you? You actually dare to hurt the people of my ghost city. Are you tired of living? Jun Muyan, let's see where you can escape to." Two voices sounded at the same time. In front of them were the ghost messengers of the Colosseum, the group of people who had just caught the fat rabbit. Behind them were the pursuers sent by Magistrate Shu. Almost every one of them was an expert at the peak of heaven stage or above. It could be said that the current Mu Yang had nowhere to go, and there were pursuers behind her. It would be hard for her to escape even if she had wings. "Jun Mu Yang, I advise you to obediently surrender. Otherwise, if we make a mistake and injure your beautiful face and body, it will be too late for you to regret it." Muyan holds the Tianmo Qin horizontally across her chest, her expression leisurely, her eyes biting cold. "Is that so? Why don't you try and see how you can fail?" As soon as she finished speaking, her jade-like fingers gently plucked the strings. The clanging of weapons and armored horses flowed out from her fingertips. At the same time, the notes turned into sound blades and shot towards the ghost envoys. Back in the fog forest, Muyan's zither sound blade could only hurt one person with each sound. At this moment, the sound blades could already turn into a meteor-like rain of swords, making it impossible to dodge or evade. After a few short breaths, the ghost envoys blocking in front of Muyan all screamed and collapsed. The remaining ghost envoys widen their eyes in horror, looking at Muyan like they're looking at a monster. It's not like the people of Ghost City haven't seen a pre-celestial powerhouse. Chapter 137. In the blink of an eye, several peak Earth stage and early Heaven stage ghost messengers actually fell to the ground. Facing Jun Muyan, they don't even have the slightest bit of power to resist. "Jun Muyan, don't run if you have the gut." Magistrate Shu's bellow comes from a distance. What followed was the terrifying pressure of an inborn expert. And it wasn't just one, but 5. Mu Yang, however, chuckled lightly, and said in a clear voice, "Magistrate Shu, have you gone senile? This lady is a woman, so naturally I don't have any guts. On the other hand, if Magistrate Shu is willing to be like me and be a gutless person, there's no harm in me staying behind to discuss with Magistrate Shu." "Ah, slut, slut. I'll kill you. I'll kill you." Magistrate Shu rushes over like a gust of wind, but there's no sign of Jun Muyan in front of him. "Where is he? Where is that bitch?" The ghost envoy trembled. She ran away. Trash." Magistrate Shu swings a slap over, ruthlessly flipping that ghost envoy to the ground. "You can't even keep a woman, what's the use of the ghost city? Find that bitch for me, dead or alive. Whoever finds that bitch will be heavily rewarded." The ghost city has been turned upside down. All the guests have been driven to the beast-fighting Colosseum and are not allowed to leave. The ghost envoys in the ghost city are all dispatched, conducting a carpet search, just to find a young girl who hasn't even reached 20 years of age. However, no matter how they searched, they couldn't even catch Mu Yang's shadow. On the contrary, bad news kept coming from various places in the ghost city. "Magistrate Shu, not good, not good. That WN Ren coup has collapsed, all the slaves have run out. Magistrate Shu, this is bad. The armory, all the weapons in the armory have been emptied. Magistrate Shu, things aren't looking good. Those strange beasts and slaves at the back of the beast-fighting Colosseum have all been released from their cages. Moreover, I don't know why, but all of them seem to have gone berserk. The original draft can't control them anymore. Magistrate Shu's eyes are bloodshot, and his eyes are about to split open. He's so angry that he's about to explode. Jun Muyan, I will tear you into 1,000 pieces. Bitch, I'm going to tear you to pieces. At this moment, Magistrate Shu wished he could tear Jun Muyan's corpse into 10,000 pieces, but unfortunately, he couldn't even touch the corner of Jun Muyan's clothes. Jun Muyan is like a cat playing with a mouse, freely shuttling through the ghost city. Wherever they went, they would wreak havoc and create chaos. The Tianmo Qin's zither soundblade is not a joke. Under the support of powerful profound energy, even a sturdy building could be instantly destroyed into rubble. Thus, one side chased while the other fled. In less than an hour, the flourishing ghost city, which originally represented the pinnacle of Xi'an's power, has unexpectedly been turned into ruins everywhere. It's a tragic sight. In the end, there was not only anger in Magistrate Shu's eyes, but also panic. The ghost city was destroyed. If he still can't catch Muyan today, he will definitely die an incomparably unsightly death. Thinking of this, Magistrate Shu's twisted face revealed a crazed killing intent and malevolence. Today, in the entire ghost city, there is only one place that hasn't been destroyed or plundered. Warehouse for draft. Therefore, Jun Muyan will definitely go there. Magistrate Shu took his people and rushed to the location of the medicinal ingredients warehouse as fast as lightning. With a bang, the door was kicked open. Chapter 138. As soon as he says that, a clear and moving laughter, like silver bells, comes from inside the room. TSK, you guys are really slow. I've been waiting here for a long time. The door opens, revealing the empty warehouse. In the center of the warehouse, cabinets are stacked high and high. At the top, a young girl in green sits leisurely, her black hair lightly dancing, her smile languid, looking down at the few people who rush into the room. If it's not that Jun Muyan, who else could it be? Many of the medicinal herbs that are stored in the Ghost City's draft warehouse are priceless and priceless. They can also be regarded as the Ghost City's treasures. However, the warehouse in front of them is completely empty. There's nothing left. All the herbs once again, they've been plundered clean by Muyan. Magistrate Shu's chest heaves up and down, looking at Muyan with eyes that can almost spit fire. But the next moment, his face suddenly changes, revealing a greedy look. Jun Muyan, you have a spatial treasure on you, right? Otherwise, with so many things in the Ghost City, how would she be able to plunder everything cleanly? In the Yenwu continent, a portable space is a legendary treasure. Even in the Ghost City, there's only one Ghost Emperor at the highest level. But this Jun Muyan has a spatial treasure on her. If he can seize this spatial treasure, then he can be absolved of today's crime. What Magistrate Shu can think of, the other pre-celestial powerhouses can also think of. Their reactions are surprisingly fast, and in the blink of an eye, they've already surrounded Muyan. Miss Jun, if Magistrate Shu had spoken inappropriately just now, and offended you in any way, we can apologize on his behalf. Our Ghost City has always treated you as an honored guest. Why must we fight to the point of life and death? This time, the one who speaks is a middle-aged man who looks like a scholar. This man looks younger than the others. But the moment Muyan looks at him, she slightly narrows her eyes. Although they're both pre-celestial, this man is clearly a lot stronger than Magistrate Shu and the others. When the man sees Muyan looking over, he looks up at her snow-white complexion, and a touch of amazement flits through his eyes. Then he hooks up his lips, revealing a refined and gentle smile. This one is Cao Wendao, also a magistrate of Xi'an's Ghost City. If Miss Jun doesn't mind, why don't we sit down and have a good talk? In fact, the 5 pre-celestial powerhouses here are all Ghost City's magistrates. After all, no matter how strong the Ghost City is, pre-celestial powerhouses aren't like radishes or cabbages that can be found anywhere. Cao Wendao shows kindness to Mu Yang. Magistrate Shu's eyes flash with unwillingness and resentment, but he doesn't say anything in the end. Today's matter has turned out to be like this. Although the other magistrates are also helping him to capture Mu Yang, however, she still held a grudge against him in her heart. It was obviously a good thing to recruit a powerful alchemist, But it was unexpectedly handled like this by this idiot Shu Wanhu. Even the ghost city was almost demolished. I'm afraid that regardless of the outcome of today's matter, Shu Wanhu's position as an infernal judge will no longer be maintained. Hearing Cao Wendao's words, Mu Yang's lips curled into a playful smile. Sit down and have a good talk. If we talk, you won't force me to become Ghost City's exclusive alchemist, or are you saying that if we talk, you won't covet the secret space treasure on me? Chapter 139. This is the first time I've heard someone explain forcibly seizing in such a fresh and refined way. Mu Yan mockingly says, but what if I don't want to? Cao Wendao's eyes suddenly darken, and he slaps the air with his palm. With a loud bang, the dozen or so medicine cabinets under Mu Yan are smashed into pieces. Wood shavings flutter and dust fill the sky. When the ghost envoys who are chasing after Mu Yan see this scene, they take a step back with pale complexions. They look at Cao Wendao with awe and worship in their eyes. This Jun Mu Yan is definitely going to die today. These are 5 magistrates, 5 pre-celestial powerhouses. So what if Jun Mu Yan is also a pre-celestial? 1 against 5, is there still a need to guess what the outcome will be? Isn't it Jun Mu Yan's own stupidity? Since she escaped, she should have obediently hid. She was actually stupid enough to stay in the warehouse. Now that she's being besieged by Magistrate Cao and the others, how can she still have a way out? In the crowd, Yu Yang's complexion is deathly pale. She looks at old Dao at the side. Her voice is already trembling. It's me who harmed Miss Jun. Miss Jun accepted my invitation. What should I do? How can I save Miss Jun? Old Dao grits his teeth. Miss Jun has given me a new lease of life. Old Dao, can't just watch her die. Miss Yu Yang, you stay here. Old Dao, will go outside the ghost city to get reinforcements. Before I come back, you mustn't let Miss Jun die. Yu Yang's complexion is still deathly pale, but there's a persistent light in her eyes. Okay, even if I have to risk my life, even if I have to kneel on the ground and beg, I will definitely protect Miss Jun. I won't let anything happen to her. Old Dao nods, and his figure shuttles through the crowd, quickly disappearing. Yu Yang is staring at the direction of the warehouse. When the wood shavings and dust scatter, a blue figure, like a slowly blooming blue lotus, floats down from the sky. Cao Wendao looks at the girl's picturesque face, and says in a deep voice, Jun Mu Yan, I'll give you one last chance. If you obediently surrender, I guarantee that the ghost city will absolutely let bygones be bygones for your actions today. Magistrate Cao, why are you still being so long-winded with her? Magistrate Shu finally couldn't take it anymore, and let out an angry roar. This slut killed my disciple Luo Fei. We can't let her off today no matter what. Saying that, his eyes revealed a sinister and vicious look. There's one more thing that Magistrate Cao probably doesn't know. This slut has a very precious son. When the time comes, we'll capture her son and torture him. No matter how stubborn this bitch is, won't she still have to obediently surrender? Mu Yan gently plucks the Tianmo Qin in her hands. Her voice is soft and her smile is charming. Magistrate Shu, I could have easily escaped from under your eyes, but I've been waiting here, not leaving. Do you know why? Why? The strings of the Tianmo Qin are plucked, making an irregular but pleasant sound. Mu Yang's words were accompanied by the sound of the zither, because before I leave, I still want your life. In this world, all the people who humiliated and hurt Xiaobao, not a single one of them would be spared. As soon as he finished speaking, his slender and fair fingers suddenly moved. The gentle music turned into a roar that was like a monstrous wave. Piak, 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 piak. Chapter 140. The huge ceiling is on the verge of collapse, and dust is flying everywhere. Outside the warehouse, the ghost envoys widen their eyes in horror. Their bodies are shivering out of instinct. The fight between 6 pre-celestial powerhouses, even if it's just a little bit of pressure leaking out, it's enough to make their blood churn, making it difficult to breathe. But no matter how scared and uncomfortable they are, no one leaves. Every pair of eyes is firmly fixed on the 6 intertwining figures in the warehouse. As time goes by, the ghost envoys' expressions become more and more frightened. Because, after a quarter of an hour, Jun Muyan still hasn't been defeated. Half an hour has passed, and Jun Muyan still hasn't been defeated. The sound of the powerful zither crisscrosses in the surging internal force. It forcibly cleaves open a hole. 5 magistrates, 5 pre-celestial powerhouses, besieging a girl, but there's no progress for half an hour. Such a situation has never happened since the opening of the Ghost City. Yu Yang clasps her hands together, tightly clasping them, her heart incessantly praying for Muyan's safety. However, the next moment, Cao Wendao's palm suddenly hits Muyan's chest. The girl's figure flies backwards like a kite with a broken string. The ghost constables cheered in an instant. Yu Yang's heart is raised. But no one expected that Muyan, who's in midair, would suddenly turn around, facing Magistrate Shu's direction. The sound of the Tianmo Qin suddenly changes, like a rustling cold wind, full of murderous intent. Cao Wendao's complexion changes. Wenhu, be careful. Magistrate Shu sneers. Want to hurt me with a mere sound blade? You're looking down on me, Shu Wenhu. As he speaks, his figure doesn't retreat, but advances instead, suddenly pouncing towards Muyan. To put it bluntly, the strongest skills of a zither master are nothing more than long-range attacks and confusion. As long as he gets close, no matter how powerful Muyan's sound blade attack is, it'll be useless. When he catches this slut, he'll make her beg for death. However, it was also at this moment that he saw a charming smile blossom on the young girl's face right before his eyes. Just like the red spider lily that blooms in the blood-soaked land, enchanting and full of death. The next moment, the Tianmo Qin in Muyan's hand suddenly disappears, and a sword appears in her hand. Boundless profound energy surged out of her body like an avalanche. That was the sound of a blade piercing into flesh. Magistrate Shu's blood-red eyes were wide open. He slowly lowered his head and looked at his chest. A long sword had already pierced through it. The tip of the sword trembled slightly. As the dark force surged into the rice, he could feel that his heart was breaking bit by bit and his life force was flowing out. But how could it be? How could this be? They had 5 inborn experts, while the other party was just a young girl who wasn't even 20 years old. Why did he lose? How could he possibly lose? The girl in front of him smiled lightly. Her smile was as bright as the morning sun and as beautiful as a peach. Do you think I only know how to transform zither sound into a blade? In fact, I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Withdrawing the long sword, Magistrate Shu's body fell straight down. Until the moment of his death, his eyes were still staring straight ahead, unable to rest in peace. He really can't understand why the Ghost City would go all out to besiege and kill a little girl. Why did he still die? There was a deathly silence in the hall, and even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Chapter 141. At this moment, a trace of regret rises in his heart. Because Mu Yang is too strong. Strong enough to make people tremble in fear. And they have made such an enemy for the Ghost City. If they can't kill Mu Yang today, then in the future, as Mu Yang continues to grow, the consequences would simply be unimaginable. So today, Mu Yang must die. A cold light flashes in Cao Wendao's eyes, and he sternly says, "Everyone, we can no longer keep this person alive." The other 3 judges also have the same grave expression, slowly nodding. Surrounded in the middle, Mu Yang's complexion is as white as ice crystals, and the blue clothes on her body are already stained with blood. Her current situation is very bad. Under the siege of the 5 people, the internal force within her body has already been consumed by more than half. Cao Wendao's palm even makes her chest ache faintly. Even if she escapes the attacks of these 4 people, she has no way to escape in the Ghost City. For Mu Yang, this is already a dead end. It should be a desperate situation that would make anyone panic and fear. But in such a hopeless situation, Muyan actually smiles. A pair of peach blossom eyes are charming and bewitching, like water shrouded in mist. There's a flame that slowly sprang up from the bottom of her eyes. It's excitement, it's joy, it's the desire to fight. She wants to see to what extent she can fight without the help of the Tianmo Qin. She also wants to know how much her strength has improved after 4 years in the mountains. The long sword draws a beautiful arc in the air, and the tip of the sword points in Cao Wendao's direction. Want to kill me? Then let's see if you can do it. On the streets of Xi'an, two figures are galloping like lightning. Han Yi, who is following behind, sees Zhang Shong's back, and feels the terrible, almost uncontrollable pressure coming from his body. His whole person simply doesn't feel good. The ghost city has actually trapped Miss Zhang, and they even want to kill her. God, isn't this courting death? No. Not only are they courting death themselves, but they also want the entire Yanwu continent to be buried together with this group of idiots. If Miss Zhang is really injured, Han Yi simply can't imagine how angry Zhang Shong would be, and how he would react. That group of idiots from the ghost city, they're courting death themselves, can't they not implicate others? Who? The ghost city is sealed, no one is allowed to leave. The ghost envoy guarding the entrance of the ghost city hasn't even finished speaking when he suddenly spits out a mouthful of blood and flies far away. Han Yi follows Di Mingju, entering the ghost city's complex unimpeded all the way. As the number of ruined buildings increases, the smell of blood becomes thicker and thicker, and the breath that Di Mingju exudes also becomes more and more frightening. Even Han Yi, who is following behind him, can't help but shiver. Not to mention the ghost envoys in the ghost city. Before they could even get close, they had already fainted and foamed at the mouth. In just a short while, they had already arrived at the location of the medicinal herb warehouse. This place could no longer be called a warehouse. It was a pile of ruins. The air was thick with the smell of blood. 5 figures wrapped in cold saber light and sword shadows crisscrossed. Han Yi takes a closer look and sees that the girl in cyan is being besieged by 5 pre-celestial powerhouses. She's covered in blood, and he immediately sucks in a mouthful of cold air. This time, Zhang Shong is really going to go crazy. Before he could finish this thought, Di Mingju's figure had already soared into the sky, and a shockingly powerful airflow gushed out like an avalanche. Chapter 142. Mu Yang, who was in midair, was suddenly embraced into a wide embrace, tightly hugging her. Muyan, how are you? Are you hurt badly? Does it hurt? The man's hoarse and trembling voice urgently rings out. The hands that were originally tightly holding her seem to remember something. They abruptly loosen, then softly embrace her again. As if she's the most precious treasure. If it's too heavy, he's afraid that she'll hurt, and if it's too light, he's afraid that she'll disappear. Especially when he sees Muyan's blood-soaked clothes, Di Mingju can't help but tremble. Damn it, these people should all die 1,000 times. Even he can't bear to force the slightest bit, the person he holds in the palm of his hand, the person he hides at the bottom of his heart. These dregs actually dare to hurt his Muyan. Muyan is fighting to her heart's content, still wanting to continue. Being suddenly interrupted by Di Mingju like this, she only feels extremely depressed. But when she turns her head and sees this insufferably arrogant man in front of her, she stares blankly at first, then a trace of warmth flits through her eyes. Don't worry, I'm fine, this isn't my blood. Muyan raises the corner of her mouth, smiling conceitedly and leisurely. These wastes want to kill me, it's nothing more than a dream. When the girl smiles, there seems to be a vast starry sky jumping and twinkling in her eyes. There's pride, conceit, and also a free and easy feeling of looking down on the world. It's only at this time that Muyan is like a 19-year-old girl, cunning, willful, and high-spirited. Di Mingju really loves this appearance of hers. His fingers caress the girl's cold and tender cheeks. His fingertips rub, wiping away the bloodstains on her face. Hiss. With a low cry, Muyan wrinkles her brows. She suddenly takes a step back, and angrily says, Di Mingju, do you have a grudge against me? So forceful? I wasn't hurt by this group of wastes, but you've already scratched me. The charming and gentle feelings dissipate in an instant. Di Mingju gnashes his teeth in anger, wishing he could grab this little woman into his arms, ruthlessly gag her little mouth, and ravage her as punishment. Does she know how worried he was just now, how afraid that something would happen to her? But before he could get angry, Muyan's body suddenly softens, and she falls into his arms. In that fight just now, she fought to her heart's content, fighting 1 against 4 without falling into a disadvantageous position. However, The consumption of the profound qi in his body was too great. The moment he relaxed, he immediately felt as if the last bit of strength in his body had been sucked out. For a moment, he couldn't even stand steadily. Feeling the young girl's soft body tightly pressed against him, the fragrant breath hitting his face, Ming-ju's entire body stiffens. After a long while, he reached out and hugged her tightly. In a trance, he hears Muyan's whisper, as light as a mosquito, Ming-ju, take me home. As soon as she finished speaking, she closed her eyes and fell asleep peacefully. They had just met for the first time. She didn't know why, but when this man appeared, she felt at ease and could rely on him. As long as this man was here, he would definitely help her solve the predicament in front of her. She did not need to be exhausted, nor did she need to support herself. Ming-ju looks at the girl in his arms, her complexion deathly pale. His complexion suddenly becomes even more frightening than the Azura demon gods. His cold eyes swept over Cao Wendao and the others who had just climbed up from the ground. His hoarse voice sounded like it came from the abyss of hell. You dare to harm this monarch's woman, all of you deserve to die 10,000 times. Cao Wendao and the other three stood up. Chapter 143. If the other people's coercion is just a kind of imposing manner that makes people tremble in fear. The pressure of this mysterious man in front of them seems to have condensed into a substance. A pair of ice-cold, bone-chilling hands pinch their hearts, and suddenly tighten. They obviously haven't launched any attack, but the four people suddenly grab their throats, open their mouths wide, and let out a terrifying cracking sound. And the entire ghost city's ground begins to emit a violent hum. Large chunks of gravel fall from the already dilapidated ceiling. Not to mention the four judges who are directly under attack. Even the faces of Yu Yang and the others who are hiding on the side are deathly pale, vomiting blood. They want to cry for help, but not a single sound comes out. Even the guests of the ghost city, who were driven to the beast-fighting Colosseum, each and every one of them begins to have difficulty breathing, the internal force within their bodies surging uncontrollably. It's as if an invisible hand has appeared between heaven and earth, firmly grasping the ghost city. With just a little bit of force, he would be able to crush this huge building and the living beings within it. Jun Shong, calm down a bit. Han Yi couldn't bear it anymore. He risks death and rushes over, saying in a trembling voice, Jun Shong, don't forget, this isn't the Shoshen continent, it's the Yenwu continent. If you slightly release your coercion, it could make this world collapse. This is the place where Miss Muyan lives. No, aren't they just a few dregs? This subordinate will handle it for you. Hearing that, Ming-ju looks down at the girl in his arms. Even though he has tried his best not to let the coercion affect Muyan, the person in his arms still slightly frowns, as if she's sleeping very restlessly. Ming-ju's hand that is holding Muyan suddenly tightens, a touch of tenderness and heartache flashes through his eyes. The coercion on his body dissipates without a trace in the blink of an eye. Cao Wendao has just escaped from death, no longer caring about his dignity. With a thud, he kneels in front of Ming-ju. We were wrong, we had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive us, forgive the ghost city. At this moment, Cao Wendao and the other three are really regretting to the point that their intestines are green. The people of the ghost city are used to being tyrannical. How could they have thought that forcing an insignificant apothecary to stay would actually provoke these two fiends? Jun Muyan, a girl of only 18 or 19 years old, is all by herself, yet she has turned their ghost city upside down. She thought that Jun Muyan was already scary enough, but this man that appeared in front of her wasn't scary at all, he was simply an Azura demon. Facing this person, they were only left with an instinctive fear. How could they have the slightest ability to resist? Ming-ju slowly raises his head to look at them, a cold smile appearing on his grave and stern face. He raised two slender fingers and gently slid them from top to bottom. Suddenly, Cao Wendao covered his throat and widened his eyes in horror. He opened his mouth, wanting to beg for mercy, wanting to scream, but blood rushed out from his lips and teeth, gushing out from between his fingers. Bang 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 bang. With four muffled thuds, the four infernal judges collapsed to the ground like corpses covered in blood. On the side, Han Yi sneers, thinking in his heart, injuring Miss Muyan and you still want to escape unscathed? Wasn't that daydreaming? At this moment, Di Mingju's gaze is already looking at the surrounding ghost envoys. Everyone here has a part in hurting Muyan. He would not let a single one of them go. Chapter 144. Honored sir, please be lenient. A cry comes from a distance. Then, a figure is seen approaching from afar as fast as lightning, urgently stopping in front of Di Mingju and Han Yi. They see that the person who has come is in his early 40s, even younger than Cao Wendao. But his temples are white, and the vicissitudes of life in his eyes make him look even more incomparably old. Seeing this person, many people in the ghost city cry out in joy. King of Hell! It's King of Hell! We're saved! The ghost city is saved! The person who has come is actually the person in charge of Xia An's ghost city, King of Hell Xia Yi. Everyone in the ghost city knows how powerful and frightening the King of Hell is. Although they are all pre-celestial powerhouses, 5 magistrates added together can't compare to a King of Hell. So when they see Xia Yi's arrival, the ghost envoys think that they're saved, each and every one of them almost crying tears of joy. However, what makes them shocked is that when Xia Yi sees Di Mingju, not only does he not fly into a rage, he instead reveals a frightened and vigilant expression. He even instinctively takes a step back. His complexion changes again and again, and he finally slowly cups his hands. This one is Ghost City's King of Hell Xia Yi. May I ask for your honored sir's name? If my ghost city has offended you in any way, I hope that you will be magnanimous and let us go. As long as it's within the scope of our ability, my ghost city is willing to make any compensation. As soon as Xia Yi says this, the surrounding ghost envoys all suck in a mouthful of cold air, their complexions becoming increasingly pale. Even the King of Hell is afraid to this extent. Who is this man? What kind of fiend did they provoke this time? Han Yi sneers, stepping forward and saying, compensation? You injured my madam. Do you think that by saying a word of compensation, you can get away with it? Hearing that, a mouthful of old blood gets stuck in Xia Yi's throat, and he can't spit it out. Just now, he glanced at the girl in Di Mingju's arms. Although she's unconscious, she's only exhausted, and not injured at all. And what about his ghost city? Not only are 5 magistrates dead, more than half of the building has collapsed, and all the treasures and belongings have been completely lost. It can be said to be a heavy loss. Shouldn't he be the one who should be compensated? Han Yi sneers, since you have nothing to say, then all of you should die as an apology to my madam. As he spoke, he unsheathed his sword, which gleamed with a cold light. There's no need for Di Mingju to make a move. Han Yi, with 90% of his cultivation suppressed, is already enough to make Xia Yi and the group of ghost envoys tremble, their faces revealing despair. Wait a minute. Suddenly, an aged voice shakily rings out, surrounding and killing Miss Jun was the doing of Magistrate Shu and his men. Me and Miss Yu Yang, we want to risk our lives to save Miss June. Please be lenient and give our ghost city a way out. Old Dao, who had followed Xia Yi in, knelt on the ground with a thud, his face full of pleading. Han Yi narrows his eyes. You risked your life to save my madam? Yes. It's all thanks to Miss Jun's medicine that I was able to break through the bottleneck. Miss Jun has given me and Miss Ruyan a new lease of life. How can we just watch as Miss Jun dies? Old Dao pointed to the heavens and swore, I dare to swear that everything I said is true. Please believe me. The reinforcements that old Dao had requested were none other than the King of Hell, Xia Yi. Chapter 145. But for so many years, he hasn't asked Xia Yi for anything in return. This time, he makes an exception for Muyan. Yu Yang kneels on the ground, her voice choking and trembling. I want to protect Miss Jun, but I'm too incompetent. In fact, I can't do anything for Miss June. If Your Excellency really wants to punish, then please punish me directly, because Miss Jun came to Ghost City precisely because she accepted my invitation. But please let the lives of the innocent people in Ghost City go. Han Yi sees that old Dao and Yu Yang are speaking with sincerity, and his complexion improves quite a bit. He turns back to look at Di Mingju. But he sees that Defying doesn't even look at them. He turns around and leaves while carrying the unconscious Muyin. In a moment of carelessness, his figure has already gone several meters away. Seeing the man's cold and lofty figure disappear, Xia Yi and the ghost envoys simultaneously breathe a sigh of relief. Yu Yang and old Dao suddenly collapse to the ground, like they've just survived a disaster. Han Yi doesn't leave right away. Instead, he looks down at all of them. Seeing that the two of you are sincere in wanting to save my family's madam, I can let the rest of you go. But if there's a next time, and anyone in Ghost City dares to disrespect my family's madam, hehe, you know the consequences. When everyone hears this, they immediately go wild with joy. Each and every one of them swears that they won't dare to make a move against Muyin again. In the future, when they see Muyin, they will definitely worship her like an ancestor, not daring to be the slightest bit negligent. Han Yi nods in satisfaction. Soon after, his gaze falls on Xia Yi, a mocking smile appearing on his face. I really didn't expect that after 1,000 years, the Ghost City would actually fall to such a state. Can it only be maintained by relying on force and robbery? What a disgrace. Hearing that, Xia Yi raises his head, looking shocked. Your Excellency, what do you mean? The sneer on Han Yi's face slowly recedes, expressionless as he says, go back and tell Gu within a month, let him explain clearly in front of Jun Shong how he hurt Madam today. Otherwise, prepare to disappear forever. Xia Yi suddenly widens his eyes, suddenly stands up and exclaims, who are you people? Han Yi doesn't pay attention to him anymore. He sneers, then turns around and quickly disappears. Xia Yi stared blankly at his departing back, unable to come back to his senses for a long while. Old Dao couldn't help but whisper, Yama, what's wrong? Who are those two people? Xia Yi is silent for a long time, only then does he silently murmur, Gu, that's the highest person in charge of the Ghost City, the name of the Ghost Emperor. In the Ghost City, apart from the various Ghost Kings, no one knows of him. Why? Why would that man know? He wanted the Ghost Emperor to appear in front of Jun Shong within a month. What did he mean by that? Xia Yi suddenly turned around, ignoring the doubts of old Dao and the others, and quickly left. He had to report this news to the Ghost Emperor immediately. Xia Yi has an intuition that perhaps, the sky of the Ghost City is about to change. Don't worry, young master, your wife is fine. It's just that her profound energy and physical strength were overused, so she collapsed. As long as I rest for a few days and take good care of myself, I'm sure I'll be able to recover. Under Defying's icy gaze, the doctor stutters as he finishes his diagnosis. It's only until Han Yi smiles and asks him to go out and settle the consultation fee that the doctor hurriedly leaves, as if he's been granted amnesty. Chapter 146. Inside the room, there's only Defying and the still unconscious Muyin. He sits down on the edge of the bed, gazing at the girl's sleeping face. The cold light in his eyes slowly becomes softer and softer, more and more persistent. His fingers caress that picturesque and beautiful face. He wants to caress it, but then he remembers her accusation against him in the Ghost City, and hangs his hand in the air in annoyance. Muyin's skin is so delicate, as if it could be broken with a blow. If he touches it, what if he hurts her again and wakes her up? Defying frowns. On one hand, he feels that with his identity, isn't touching the woman he likes a matter of course. On the other hand, he remembers Muyin's angry expression in the Ghost City, and his heart is apprehensive, unable to put down his hand that's suspended in the air. The doctor's words suddenly echo in his ears, your wife is not seriously injured. Muyin is his wife. Defying's ears are slightly hot, and there's an inexplicable joy bubbling in his heart. His gaze slowly moves from Muyin's jet-black hair, her smooth forehead, her long eyelashes, her raised nose, and slowly falls to those light pink lips. Even after a long time, he still remembers the sweet taste of those lips. Every day and every night, he yearns for her in his dreams, longing to taste her again. Even though he promised Muyin that he would pursue her until she fell head over heels in love with him. But since it's a foregone conclusion, isn't it only right and proper for him to exercise a little of his rights as a husband? Di Mingju's ears are slightly red, his eyes burning. One hand props up next to Muyan's face, and his body slowly bends down. Little by little, he approaches those red lips that he's been thinking about for a long time. Just as his lips are about to seize those lips that are as soft as peach blossoms, and properly savor that sweet fragrance, suddenly, a burst of powerful profound energy abruptly attacked from between him and Mu Yang. Di Mingju is caught off guard, and is pushed back several steps by that force. His charming and gentle desire is interrupted, and Di Mingju's complexion is so unsightly that he wants to kill someone. His cold eyes look at the bedside, at the culprit who disturbed him and Muyan. He sees a little boy who's just taller than the edge of the bed guarding in front of Muyan, coldly glaring at him. The handsome little face is taut, and his pair of ice blue eyes are the same as Di Mingju's, full of vigilance and vigilance. What do you want to do to Enchantress? The childish voice was cold, full of coldness and sternness. That imposing manner was even more terrifying than an adult who had been in a high position for a long time. But after saying that, Xiao Bao no longer cares about Di Mingju. Instead, he eagerly turns to look at Mu lying on the bed. The person in front of him was extremely beautiful, but her face was so pale that it was almost translucent. Even her originally bright red lips were as white as rice paper. Her long eyelashes drooped, and she was completely silent, as if she would never wake up. Xiao Bao's eyes redden all of a sudden. He clutches Mu Yang's finger tightly, and his little body trembles. Xiao Bao. But he had never been a child who would cry, so he just leaned against the edge of the bed and let out a weak cry like a young beast. Mother, don't leave little Bao. Little Bao will be good. Lying on the bed, Mu Yang seems to sense something, and her long eyelashes tremble slightly. Di Mingju frowns. With a cold snort, he grabs Xiao Bao by the collar, and turns around to walk out. Chapter 147. At this time, how could Xiao Bao be willing to leave his mother? Like a crazed little beast, he began to struggle with all his might. The profound chi of a heaven stage powerhouse was released without a care for anything else. Di Mingju didn't expect that this little guy's cultivation would be so high. Caught off guard, her clothes were cut by the sword formed from his profound chi. Di Mingju's eyes darkened, coldly saying, "Quiet down for me, she's tired, she's just sleeping, are you sure you want to wake her up?" The man's words startled Xiao Bao, and he couldn't help but lessen his strength in struggling and kicking. Mother is all right. Just too tired. Is he asleep? When he thought about how his mother was fine and wouldn't leave him, Xiao Bao's tightly clenched heart instantly relaxed. The rationality and calmness that did not belong to his age instantly returned. Let me go. Xiao Bao raises his head, not showing any weakness as he glares at Di Mingju. I'm going to see Enchantress. I promise I won't wake her up. In this world, besides Muyan, who in the three realms would dare to shout at Di Mingju and frown in anger? Those who really dared to be rude to Di Mingju would have long since died without a corpse, and would have been separated to grow grass for 300 years. Did this little guy in front of him eat the heart of a bear and the guts of a leopard? How dare he order him around? Di Mingju wants to get angry. However, looking at Xiao Bao's exquisite features that are 70 to 80% similar to Mu Yang's, as well as those ice blue eyes that are exactly the same as his, there were still traces of red in that pair of stubborn eyes, which represented how scared and panicked the little guy was just now. For some reason, his heart, which had always been as hard as iron, softened a little. Di Mingju gives a cold snort, but he still loosens his hand. As soon as Xiao Bao's feet touch the ground, his small body rushes out like an arrow leaving the bowstring, and he pounces to Mu Yang's side. But this time, his movements are very gentle, and his eyes are full of attachment as he looks at Mu Yang. However, her small fists were tightly clenched. Although that hateful man said that Enchantress was just too tired and fell asleep. But Xiao Bao knew that his mother had been bullied by bad people, and that she had been injured. When the bad guys bullied Enchantress, he couldn't stay by her side. He said that he would protect his mother, but he didn't do it. Her big, watery eyes seemed to be covered by a layer of mist, but she stubbornly refused to let the tears fall. On the side, Di Mingju sees the appearance of the little guy forcibly holding back his tears. He doesn't know why, but he, who has always had a heart of stone, unexpectedly feels upset. Just as she was about to open her mouth to speak, she saw the little guy suddenly rubbing his eyes. He carefully moved closer to Muyan and gently kissed her on the cheek. Xiaobao thought to himself, every time mother kisses Xiaobao like this, Xiaobao feels very happy. Xiaobao kisses mother. Mother, wake up soon, okay? However, seeing this scene, Di Mingju's entire person feels unwell. This little bastard, he hasn't even kissed Muyan yet. Di Mingju grabs Xiaobao by the collar and lifts him up. Unable to restrain his anger, he doesn't forget to lower his voice. What are you doing? Xiaobao glared back without showing any weakness. His big eyes were still a little red and moist, but his imposing manner wasn't weak at all. Then what were you doing while mother was asleep? Humph, this shameless lecher, don't think that he doesn't know anything. Just now, he had successfully advanced to the middle heaven stage, and when he came out, he saw this lecher trying to take advantage of his mother. Chapter 148. But very quickly, he coldly snorts, expressionlessly saying, Ben Jun is naturally taking care of your Nyangqin. Unfortunately, his righteous explanation is met with Xiao Bao's disdainful look of you're deceiving a child. Di Mingju is speechless. He wishes he could pull down this little thing's pants, and ruthlessly spank his bottom. One big and one small, the two of them are staring at each other, neither of them willing to take a step back. The door to the room is suddenly pushed open, and Han Yi comes in with a steaming black earthen pot. He lowers his voice, and excitedly says, Jun Shong, this subordinate has inquired, the people of Yanwu continent nourish their bodies, this black-boned chicken soup is. Before he can finish, the two people at the bedside turn their heads at the same time, fiercely glaring at him. They growl in unison, get out. Idiot, you're disturbing my Nyangqin's sleep. Idiot, you're disturbing my lady's rest. Han Yi shivers in fright, and the chicken soup in his hands almost falls to the ground. God, why does he have this illusion? It's like he's facing two Jun Shongs. This kind of pressure and disdainful imposing manner hitting him in the face, it's simply making him wet his pant. Before Han Yi could react, a strong gust of wind hits him in the face. He staggers back a few steps. Then there's a bang, and the door closes against his nose. Han Yi trembles in fear as he touches his still intact nose, his eyes brimming with lingering fear. Two Jun Shongs, that's really too scary. Wait a minute, wasn't that little Jun Gongzi just now? How could he be inside? When did he go in? Just as he's thinking, he sees the door open again. Di Mingju carries Xiao Bao, striding out. Xiao Bao is forced to hang on his shoulder, his face flushing red as he angrily says, Put me down. Di Mingju ignores him, and goes straight to the backyard. Han Yi stupidly looks at this scene, his jaw about to drop. Jun Shong is actually holding a child. Although that's not really holding, it should be carrying, but that's the Jun Shong of their family, who has always kept strangers away, let alone a child and a beautiful woman. Even they, who are close to him, can't get within half a meter of Jun Shong. But now, it's fine if Jun Shong admires and pursues Miss Muyan, but is even willing to be so close to young Master Jun. If the people of the Shoshen continent were to see this scene, their eyeballs would definitely pop out. Wait, what is Jun Shong carrying the little Gongzi to do? Could it be that because of jealousy, he wanted to secretly do it with Miss Muyan's ex-husband's child? Thinking of this, Han Yi's complexion goes pale. Miss Muyan is protecting the little Gongzi like an eyeball. If she were to accidentally let the little Gongzi suffer any losses, then Jun Shong would really have no way to ask for a wife. This won't do, he must follow along. If necessary, he will remind Jun Shong to never hurt the little Gongzi. After discovering that he can't resist Di Mingju, Xiao Bao doesn't cry out like an ordinary child. Instead, he clenches his small fists and quickly revolves the internal force in his body. Di Mingju quickly brings Xiao Bao to the backyard. Just as he was about to put him down, Xiao Bao suddenly launched an attack. She patted him on the shoulder, and her small body suddenly leaped into the air. At the same time, the internal force gathered in her palm turns into a sharp blade, and she ruthlessly swings it towards Di Mingju. Di Mingju's expression doesn't even change, and he casually waves his hand. Chapter 149. Xiao Bao's figure falls down from the air, steadily landing on the ground. But his expression is very unsightly. There are countless complex emotions churning in his eyes as he looks at Di Mingju. This man is very strong, stronger than anyone he's ever met. Even stronger than his mother, a lot stronger. But even so, Xiao Bao clenches his small fists, his eyes full of determination. Even if this man is stronger, he won't let him snatch his mother away. Di Mingju looks down at him, expressionless. You should be very clear that you're not my opponent right now. But I can give you a chance. Xiao Bao, what chance? Di Mingju turns his wrist, and a piece of vermilion jade drops down from his palm. There are golden tassels dangling from the jade, gently swaying in the sunlight, emitting a bright light. However, what's more captivating than the tassels is that piece of jade. It's obviously dull in color, and its shape is ordinary, but there are strange veins on it. Gazing deeply at it, it makes people feel as if they're immersed in a vast sea of stars, and even their souls are being cleansed. Xiao Bao has never fancied gold, silver, or treasures, but seeing this piece of jade, he's inexplicably attracted. There's a hint of longing in his big crystal-clear eyes. Di Mingju looks at him and says in a low voice, "I'll give you a quarter of an hour. I won't use mysterious energy, and I won't attack. If you can snatch this piece of jade from my hands within a quarter of an hour, I'll give it to you, and I'll never appear by your mother's side again." Hearing this, Xiao Bao retracts his gaze from the jade pendant, and looks suspiciously at Di Mingju. "And if I can't do it?" "If you can't do it." Di Mingju pauses, and then says in a low voice, "Then you must accept the fact that I'm your mother's husband, your father." Han Yi, who has just arrived, almost stumbles and falls to the ground when he hears Di Mingju's words. Cold sweat is about to roll down his head. "I say, Jun Shongdaran, can you not be so shameless? In order to chase after a wife, you're even starting to trick a child. Not to mention Xiao Bao, even he can't snatch the jade pendant from Jun Shongdaran's hands. Not to mention a quarter of an hour, it's impossible to do it in an hour. Jun Shongdaran, you're bullying Miss Muyan's son like this. Aren't you afraid that Miss Muyan will find you to settle accounts?" However, Xiao Bao was not easily fooled. With a taut face, he refused without the slightest hesitation. "Liar, you're not mother's husband." The light in Di Mingju's eyes darkens, saying word by word, "There will come a day when Muyan will become Benjun's wife. It's just a matter of time, that's all. But this has nothing to do with you. You only need to know one thing. If you lose today, you must accept the possibility of me being your father in the future." Xiao Bao frowned slightly and didn't say anything. Di Mingju sneers, contemptuously saying, "What? Ben Jun has already let you reach this point, and you still don't dare to try? You said you want to become strong to protect your mother, but you only have this little courage and boldness." No matter how smart Xiao Bao was, he was still just a 4-year-old child. What's more, protecting his mother and becoming stronger were his weaknesses. Goaded by Di Mingju like this, her little face suddenly lifts up, her big eyes bursting with a prairie fire. "Fine, I'll bet with you. If you lose, you're not allowed to snatch my mother from me in the future." As soon as Han Yi hears their conversation, he immediately covers his face in shame and turns his head away. "Jun Shong, can you be any more shameless?" Chapter 150. Because it was different from what he had expected, that Jun Shong was just fooling and playing with children. After hearing that Xiao Bao has agreed to compete, not only does Di Mingju not reveal the slightest trace of a devious smile. On the contrary, he's solemn and respectful, his hands behind his back. He says in a low voice, "Polar domain, Di Mingju, please enlighten me." Little Bao was stunned. He thought that the man before him was playing with him and humiliating him. But at this moment, she saw the man's stern expression and heard his cold voice. However, Xiao Bao could feel his respect for him. This man did not treat him like a child and tease him. Instead, they treated him as an equal opponent, someone who had the same right to speak. All the shame and anger on his young and tender face disappeared. In fact, in the depths of his heart, he even faintly felt the joy and anticipation of being treated as an adult. Xiaobao also straightened his back, his expression neither servile nor overbearing, and said in a clear and melodious voice of a child, "Kaiyang, Jun Morchen, please enlighten me." As soon as he finished speaking, little Bao's figure suddenly vanished on the spot. Han Yi's pupils suddenly contract. With his experience and eyesight, although 90% of his cultivation had been sealed, he had not discovered how the young master had disappeared. The next moment, there was a flash of light in the sky. Xiao Bao's figure flits past Di Mingju's eyes like a stream of light. The profound energy that had not leaked out a moment ago suddenly poured out in torrents like a huge roaring wave. His short legs seemed to transform into a myriad of leg shadows, ruthlessly kicking towards Di Mingju's chest. A loud bang resounded. His small body flew backward like a cannonball, and he staggered and landed on the ground. Her face was slightly pale. But Han Yi simply can't be bothered to look at him. Instead, he glares at his Jun Shong as if he's seeing a ghost. The tall man was still holding the vermilion jade pendant in his hand. The jade pendant swayed gently, and the tassels shone brightly. It was as if nothing had changed. But Han Yi clearly saw that just now, just when the little Gongzi used that shadowless kick just now, Jun Shong actually took a step back. But that's his Jun Shong. Even if he didn't use his Shen Qi and sealed his spiritual power, his powerful physical body was still unique in the world. Even if he used all his strength to kick Jun Shong, he still wouldn't be able to make Jun Shong budge. However, the little master actually did it. That was only a 4-year-old child. Even if it's the child of the Avildor Miss Muyan, then, isn't that too much of an Avildor? It's just that Han Yi is so shocked by Xiao Bao's performance that his jaw almost drops. However, Xiao Bao was very dissatisfied with his own performance. His two small sword-like eyebrows furrowed slightly, and his ice-blue eyes flickered. Di Mingju expressionlessly says, "What? Giving up just like that?" As soon as he finished speaking, Little Treasure moved again. But this time, he doesn't soar into the sky. Instead, he takes slow steps, circling around Di Mingju. Han Yi finds it a bit strange at first. What's the point of circling around Jun Shong like this? Don't tell me you can make Jun Shong confused. What's more, it was so slow. But as time goes by, Han Yi's eyes widen in shock once again, and he even rubs his eyes. Because he discovered that the little young master in front of him had become countless. It's as if dozens of Xiao Bao's clones have appeared in the world, surrounding Di Mingju. It's not like Han Yi hasn't seen this kind of treacherous body technique. Chapter 151. But Xiao Bao only understands mysterious energy, yet he still managed to do it. What kind of powerful body structure does he have, and what kind of astonishing speed does he have to elevate his own speed to be able to achieve this? However, Di Mingju, who is surrounded by Xiao Bao, reveals a disdainful expression. Do you think that you can snatch the vermilion jade from my hands with these unorthodox methods? The jade pendant in his hand lightly shakes, the tassels dazzling. The Xiao Bao surrounding Di Mingju suddenly seem to have waited for the right moment, and they suddenly soar up. Bang 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 bang. The continuous sounds of fists hitting flesh resound like thunder. The trees around the courtyard are violently swaying due to the huge airflow. Along with the sounds of fists hitting flesh, Di Mingju's cold words are heard. Your feet are too slow. If I were to attack, your legs would have already been gone. Your internal force should have already filled your whole body when you made your move, and not wait until you made your move before launching it from your Qi. Remember, martial skills are used to kill people. It must be straightforward and efficient, no unnecessary movements are needed. If you can't utilize every bit of internal force to the extreme, you can't become a true expert. Han Yi is simply dumbfounded at the side. Is this still his Jun Shong, who cherishes words like gold? Unexpectedly, he patiently teaches the little Gongzi during the fight. Moreover, he even says so much in one breath. Han Yi sourly thinks, don't even mention Miss Muyan, the words that Jun Shong has said to me in a year. I'm afraid that it's not as much as what he has said to the little Gongzi today. As Di Mingju and Xiao Bao crisscrossed, time slowly passes by. It's getting closer and closer to the quarter of an hour that was set at the beginning. 10 breaths, 9 breaths, 8 breaths. Xiao Bao's face and body are already completely soaked in sweat. For the first time, he feels powerless and frustrated. At this moment, he clearly realizes that even if the man in front of him lets him go like this, it's still impossible for him to win. But in those big, wet blue eyes, there's no discouragement or despair. On the contrary, there's a blazing flame. Because Xiao Bao believes that one day, he will become stronger than this person. Mother had said that she was still young and this man was much older than her. When she grew up, she would definitely defeat him. Di Mingju looks at the unyielding fighting spirit and flame in the little guy's eyes with satisfaction. He says a rare word of praise, "You're even more outstanding than I imagined. Truly worthy of being Muyan's son." The only thing lacking was that his temper was too bad. Humph, this must have been inherited from Xiaobao's father. Trash. However, before Di Mingju could finish speaking, an unforeseen event occurs. Just as Di Mingji was silently cursing Xiaobao's biological father, Xiaobao suddenly raised his little hand and formed a sword with his fingers. A ray of profound qi condensed into a blade and suddenly shot out. There's a ripping sound, and the jade pendant rope in Di Mingju's hand is cut. At the same time, little Bao's figure flashed out like a bolt of lightning and grabbed the jade pendant. The air seemed to freeze at this moment. Han Yi gapes, unable to close his mouth for a long time. Di Mingju's expression is stiff on his face, his eyes filled with disbelief. A rare crafty smile appeared on Xiaobao's eternally cold face. The clear and melodious voice of a child resounded in the courtyard. "You defeat me, Carla." Han Yi seems to hear the sound of his Jun Shong's heart breaking. Chapter 152. Jun Shong, you mustn't go crazy. Even if you're crazy, don't vent your anger on your subordinates. However, what surprises him is that after a few breaths, Di Mingju comes back to his senses, but doesn't fly into a rage out of humiliation. His face was expressionless, but he said resolutely and decisively, "No, you're the one who lost. Because the time has come." Little Bao's little face instantly sank, and he said coldly, "He hasn't arrived yet. We're here." The two men turn their heads at the same time, fiercely glaring at Han Yi. "You tell me, is the time up or not?" Han Yi suddenly quivers. With a bitter face, he shakily says, "This subordinate. At the last moment, I was too nervous and forgot to count the time." Meeting the two people's murderous gazes, Han Yi simply wishes he could shrink himself into a ball and find a hole to burrow into. But he really didn't know. When the young master snatched the vermilion jade, did a quarter of an hour pass or not? This would probably become a riddle that would last for thousands of years, and no one would be able to confirm it. Di Mingju and Xiao Bao simultaneously turned their heads, glaring at each other. "You lost. You lost. It's not time yet. We're here. You're shameless." Humph. Han Yi has never seen his Jun Shong so childishly bickering with others. Seeing that the two of them were in a stalemate, it was unknown how long the stalemate would last. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva. "Jun Shong, little Gongzi, how about this round, we consider it a draw?" Hearing Han Yi's proposal, one adult and one child show hesitant expressions. Little Treasure opened her palm and looked at the vermilion jade in her palm. Her delicate brows furrowed slightly. Although when he confronted Di Mingju just now, he seemed to be confident. However, Xiaobao knew in his heart that he had actually lost. It was an unfair victory. Moreover, she felt that he didn't seem happy that this man would never appear in front of her and her mother again. Xiaobao frowned again. It wasn't that he was reluctant to part with this lecher, it's just that, after all, he saved his mother. So, should he admit defeat? Just like Nyang Qin said, a man must openly admit his gains and losses, success and failure. However, he really liked this piece of vermilion jade. From the moment he saw this piece of vermilion jade, he felt a sense of familiarity, so much so that he didn't want to part with it. It was as if he had seen his mother. Xiaobao wanted to give this piece of jade to his mother. He felt that his mother would be very happy if she got her hands on this piece of jade. Unfortunately, he lost. A loss was a loss. There was no reason to deny it. With a cold face, Xiaobao slowly hands the jade over to Di Mingju. "I'll return it to you." However, the reluctance in those big eyes could be clearly seen. Di Mingju takes the vermilion jade, his fingers gently caressing it. Looking at Xiaobao's lingering gaze, a rare look of hesitation appeared on his face. If it was anything else, he would have given it to the little fellow. But this piece of jade, Di Mingju himself doesn't know where this piece of vermilion jade came from. He only knew that after an accident 5 years ago, this piece of vermilion jade had appeared by his side. The vermilion jade itself was not precious, even if there were mysterious patterns on it. Otherwise, it would be impossible to pass through the barrier of the 3 realms and be brought to the Yenwu continent. However, Di Mingju doesn't know why, but he's been carrying this piece of vermilion jade with him all these years. There's always an inexplicable feeling in his heart. This piece of vermilion jade is very important to him. Chapter 153. Although the jade is very important, but marrying Muyan is even more important. Di Mingju stretches out his hand in front of Xiaobao, slowly spreading it out. "Do you want this jade?" Xiaobao raises his small head, staring at him without blinking. Di Mingju expressionlessly looks back at him. "I will only give you this one chance. If you don't want it today, you won't have another chance in the future." Sure enough, an eager expression immediately appears on Xiaobao's face. His white and tender little hand goes to grab the jade. Di Mingju's hand moves to the side, unhurriedly saying, "The condition is that you cannot obstruct me from being with your Nyangqin." Xiaobao frowns and glares at him. "Nyangqin will not agree to marry you. Mph, this is Ben Jun's business, it has nothing to do with you. You just have to promise not to obstruct and not to make trouble." Xiaobao frowns and hesitates for a long time. In the end, he can't resist the temptation of the jade, and signs a temporary truce treaty with Di Mingju. Muyan had a very good sleep. When she wakes up, she doesn't immediately open her eyes, but directly enters the space. That's because she feels an unusual internal force fluctuation in the space. This means that her Xiaobao has successfully advanced. "Baby, you've finally finished your closed-door meditation?" Muyan is just about to hug her baby son and give him a good kiss, when she sees Xiaobao hurriedly hiding something. Loneliness, unwillingness, and stubbornness flashes across his little face. However, when he turns around and sees Muyan, he immediately pounces over. Although his face is still expressionless, his big eyes are flickering, full of joy and longing. Before Muyan can hug Xiaobao, he has already hugged her tightly. The little body is buried in her arms, gently rubbing against her, indescribable attachment. But Muyan can feel her son's strange emotions. She casually thinks about it, and understands. She can't help but soften her expression. Hugging him, she softly says, "Baby, don't be afraid. Nyangqin is fine." Nyangqin was just too tired and fell asleep. Xiaobao nods in her arms, making a muffled sound in response, but he refuses to let go of her. Muyan can only hold him, gently patting and coaxing him like a baby. She felt gratified and amused at the same time. She didn't expect her precious son to be so spoiled and willful. After the mother and daughter made out for a while, Mu Yang suddenly remembered something. "Baby, what were you looking at just now?" When little Bao heard this, his body instantly stiffened, and he silently lowered his head. "Is it something that mother can't see?" Xiao Bao's long eyelashes fluttered for a moment before he said in a low voice, "Not yet." Mu Yang looks at Xiao Bao's expression and realizes that something must have happened while she was asleep. But since her precious son was unwilling to say it, she would not force him. If she wanted to know what had happened, she naturally had a place to ask. After Mu Yang left the space, Xiao Bao took out the vermilion jade again. Tightly pursing his lips, his big eyes reveal an unswerving determination. "This jade pendant, I will wait until after I defeat that lecher, then I will give it to Nyangqin in a proper manner." After saying that, he looked at the fat rabbit at the side. He brought the jade to its mouth. "Keep it for me." Don't ever lose it. How could a rabbit eat a jade pendant? However, the next moment, a miraculous scene occurred. The fat rabbit slightly moved its lips, and the vermilion jade in Xiao Bao's hand immediately disappeared. Chapter 154. After the fat rabbit swallows the jade pendant, it rubs against Xiao Bao's side and licks him with its tongue, as if it's assuring its little master that it will guard this piece of vermilion jade well. Xiao Bao touches the rabbit. The taut lines on his gloomy face finally relax, and a faint smile flashes in his eyes. He will definitely defeat that man. Then he will personally give the jade pendant to Nyang Qin. At that time, Nyang Qin will definitely be very happy. As soon as Muyan leaves the space and returns to the bed, she happens to bump into Han Yi coming in with the chicken soup. Seeing Muyan appear out of thin air, Han Yi is startled. But he quickly returns to normal. In the Shoshen continent, a portable space can be seen everywhere, and it's not unusual at all. Although it's reasonable to say that it's impossible for a portable space to appear in the Yenwu continent. But Miss Muyan is the heir to the Shun musician Ah. What kind of role is the Shun musician? That's the person who turned the three realms upside down in those days, who made all the influential families of the Shoshen continent tremble in fear and panic when they hear about it. What's so strange about such a frightening and powerful legendary figure leaving behind a space of inheritance in the Yenwu continent? Miss Muyan, this is the black-boned chicken soup that Jun Shong specially instructed the kitchen to stew for you. You've consumed too much internal force in the ghost city, and lost too much blood. It's best to drink some chicken soup to replenish your vitality. Muyan takes it a few times, takes a sip, and says with a smile, "Thank you. Miss Muyan, please don't be polite. Moreover, Jun Shong specially instructed this subordinate to stew for you." Han Yi is rambling on, trying to increase his Jun Shong's favorability. But he suddenly hears Muyan casually ask, "When I was asleep yesterday, did anything special happen?" Hearing this, Han Yi immediately shudders all over, and almost reflexively shakes his head. No, absolutely nothing special happened. But as soon as he finishes speaking, he regrets it. He can't wait to slap himself. With this attitude, isn't it clear that he has something to say? Sure enough, Muyan lifts her eyes, and the corners of her mouth slowly hooks up into a charming smile. She stretches out a finger and beckons him. When Han Yi sees her action and expression, he immediately gets goosebumps all over his body, and his heart goes cold. That, Miss Muyan, if there's nothing else, this subordinate, will go back first. Mu Yang just looked at him with a smile and didn't say anything. She even slowly took a sip of the chicken soup. Han Yi hesitates for a long while, but in the end, he doesn't have the guts to escape. With a bitter face, he obediently walked in front of her. He thought to himself, Miss Muyan is sleeping like a log. Even if he dies, he won't admit that Jun Shong bullied the little Gongzi. Miss Muyan definitely can't know who knew that Muyan's next words would almost scare him to the point of pissing his pants. "Tell me, while I was sleeping, what did your Jun Shong do to my son?" Han Yi shudders, wailing in his heart. Wait a minute, he didn't say anything. How did Muyan know? The corner of Mu Yang's lips curled up, but a trace of coldness flashed past her eyes. He mistreated my Xiao Bao? No, absolutely not. Han Yi anxiously says, Jun Shong treats the little Gongzi like his own son. How could he possibly abuse him? It's just a little friction. Just a little friction. Ha. Mu Yang makes an O sound and looks at him meaningfully. In that case, tell me what kind of small friction it is. Chapter 155. Muyan stirs the chicken soup and unhurriedly says, "It's fine if you don't say it, but I'll treat it as your Jun Shong abusing my baby son." Hehe, Han Yi, do you know what happened to the last person who hurt my son? Han Yi's mouth twitches, and he inwardly says, how come I don't know? That Ghost City's Luo Fei and Magistrate Shu only insulted Xiao Bao, and now their corpses have already begun to rot. Boo-hoo-hoo. Jun Shong, it's really not that this subordinate is incompetent and betrayed. Miss Muyan is really too scary. This subordinate thinks that the Yenwu continent is too dangerous. This subordinate should return to the Shoshen continent. A quarter of an hour later. Muyan is still unhurriedly stirring the chicken soup, the smile on her face is faint, and her eyes are dark, making people unable to see through her emotions. Han Yi swallows his saliva. Miss Muyan, you're not angry, right? Muyan curls up her lips, smiling sweetly. How could I be? How could I be angry? I'm very angry. Di Mingju actually dared to bully her baby Xiao Bao, and even made the little baby Bayo unhappy. Hehe, very good, really very good. Han Yi sees that she's smiling like a flower, and really doesn't look like she's angry. He immediately breathes a sigh of relief. Miss Muyan, you mustn't say that this subordinate told you. Otherwise, I'll die very miserably. Muyan nods, resting her chin on her hands, and leisurely says, rest assured, I'm very grateful to your Jun Shong for rescuing me from the ghost city. By the way, where is your Jun Shong? Han Yi is hesitating on how to answer about Di Mingju's whereabouts. But he hears Muyan saying indifferently, how about this, you go back and tell your Jun Shong to come to my small courtyard next door tonight. I'll personally cook and invite him to dinner, as thanks for saving my life. Han Yi suddenly widens his eyes, staring blankly at Muyan. He simply can't believe his ears. The situation has changed too quickly, he simply can't believe it. Could it be that Miss Muyan has finally been moved by Jun Shong, and is willing to accept him? Han Yi happily walks away dizzily, leaving Muyan sitting in the same place. She slowly hooks up the corners of her mouth. Her smile is like a gentle spring breeze, but her eyes are faintly discernible like stars. In the evening, Han Yi anxiously stands guard outside the room. It wasn't until there was movement inside that he suddenly rushed in. Jun Shong, you're finally back. The handsome man on the bed slowly opened his eyes and sat up. A natural majestic aura emanated from his body. The imposing manner of a monarch looking down on the world caused all living beings in the world to want to submit and follow him. This is Di Mingju, the king of the polar domain, and also the strongest person in the Shoshan continent. Seeing Han Yi rush in without permission, Di Mingju coldly looks over. Just one glance makes Han Yi quiver, and he promptly halts his impatient steps. Greetings, my lord. He respectfully knelt down and saluted. My lord has returned to the polar domain this time. Has something happened in the higher realm? No problem. Di Mingju indifferently replies. What he meant was that Elder Chang and the others were just making a routine report. There was nothing major that needed to be delayed or dealt with. Han Yi breathes a sigh of relief. Jun Shong's real body is now staying in the Yenwu continent. Even if an avatar leaves his soul and returns to the Shoshan continent, it can only be for a short period of time. Moreover, his strength wouldn't even be 1/10 of his original strength. If something were to happen in the Shoshan continent, it would be quite unfavorable. Fortunately, nothing major happened. Chapter 156. Oh. Han Yi slaps his forehead and anxiously says, how could I forget the most important thing? Jun Shong, Miss Muyan has already woken up, and has already returned to the courtyard next door. What? Di Mingju abruptly stands up, glaring at Han Yi with a devouring gaze. Why didn't you stop her? No, it's not. Han Yi doesn't have time to be afraid as he continues. Miss Muyan said that in order to thank Jun Shong for saving her life, she personally cooked and prepared dinner for you. It's already time for dinner, Jun Shong. Do you think? Wait for Ben Jun to come back, then I'll punish you for your crime. Di Mingju throws down a stern shout, and his figure instantly disappears. Such an important matter, and he's only saying it now. Han Yi is left with a bitter face, silently lamenting as he watches Di Mingju's disappearing figure. Shoshan continent is still better. Yenwu continent is too scary, let him go back. Woo woo woo. In the evening, the setting sun is like a fire. The courtyard behind Junji drugstore is quiet, without a shadow of a person. However, a candle was already lit in one of the rooms. As the candlelight swayed, it reflected the silhouette of a graceful figure inside. Di Mingju composes himself, then pushes the door open and enters. He sees a round table and wine in the room, as well as a young girl gently plucking the zither strings with a distant expression. The moment he sees Muyan, Di Mingju sucks in a mouthful of cold air, followed by a slightly disordered heartbeat and breathing. Muyan's usual attire is deliberately to make herself appear mature. But this evening, she seems to have just taken a bath. A head of soft ink-black hair drapes over her back, the dense steam making her beautiful complexion even more ethereal and otherworldly. Just like an orchid in a secluded valley, isolated from the world, yet with a fragility that makes people yearn to protect, and a charm that they long to pluck. She's only wearing a white dress. Her waist is tightened with a belt of the same color, making it look slender, like a weak willow swaying in the wind. The delicate collarbone that is slightly exposed, and the white, almost transparent ice skin, makes Mingju's mouth even more parched. A burst of heat frantically leaps down his body. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Muyan lifts her eyes, a pair of eyes flickering under the candlelight. Junshong has finally come? Mingju takes a step forward, inadvertently arriving in front of her. The door behind him closed on its own. One of them raised his head and the other looked down. As their eyes met, there seemed to be a strange flame burning between them. I said, "Call me by my name." Mingju opens his mouth, but it's this sentence. That persistent tone and childlike stubbornness makes Muyang want to laugh. "All right, Mingju. Aren't you here to eat? Don't you want to see the food I prepared for you?" Mingju purses his lips, thinking, Ben Jun wants to eat you even more. But Muyan actually said that he had personally prepared the food for her, so he naturally couldn't disappoint her. There was a round table in the middle of the room. On the table, there were 7 or 8 bowls and plates. Each plate was covered with a porcelain bowl. Beside the lid of the porcelain bowl, there was still faint steam coming out. Clearly, as Mu Yang had said, it had just been prepared. However, when Mingju opens the lid of the bowl, even with Jun Shongdaren's grave and calm demeanor, he can't help but be struck dumb at this time. Only to see that the food on the plate isn't some delicacy that looks, smells, and tastes good. Instead, it's a black, charred lump of some unknown substance. The most frightening thing is that the juice flowing at the bottom of the plate is actually a terrifying dark green color. One by one, the lids of the bowls are completely opened. Chapter 157. Some of them even emit a pungent smell. Is this food that people eat? Mu Yang looks at Mingju's frozen face and stops plucking the strings. She props her cheek with one hand and looks at the man not far away with a smile that isn't a smile. What's wrong? Jun Shong doesn't like the food that I personally made. Mingju is silent for a moment, then expressionlessly says, I like it. Saying that, he sits down at the table, picks up the chopsticks and starts to eat. She watches him stuff the dark lump of food into his mouth, refusing it without batting an eyelid, and swallowing it. Even Mu Yang can't help but widen her eyes in astonishment. It should be known that she doesn't have a natural talent for cooking. Otherwise, she wouldn't have needed a little bean sprout like Xiao Bao to take care of her diet for 4 years in the mountains. Not to mention dogs, even the things that she makes are disliked. Even her dear Xiao Bao was determined not to take a bite of it. But this Mingju actually eats it all without batting an eyelid. She watches as he really finishes a dish. Mu Yang is a little unperturbed. You really want to eat it? Mingju casts a sidelong glance at her, coldly and indifferently saying, as long as it's Madam's cooking, no matter what it is, Ben Jun will love to eat it. Mu Yang. Who the hell is your madam? After a strange silence, Mu Yang suddenly hooks up her lips and chuckles. There's food without wine, there's wine without music, it's not a blessing in life. How about I play a song for Jun Shong? Mingju coldly stares at her, neither speaking nor moving. He has a seething appearance. Mu Yang instantly understands, Mingju. However, this time, Jun Shongdaren is still not satisfied, too unfamiliar. A posture that says, if you don't call me, I won't eat, and won't listen to the song. Mu Yang grits her teeth, and finally squeezes out 2 words, a Jew. It should be a very humiliating thing for a dignified Jun Shong to be called a Jew. But Mingju seems to be satisfied, and continues to eat the food that is even more terrible than pig's food. Mu Yang can't help but touch her cheek. Calling out a Jew in such an intimate way, Mingju doesn't have any reaction, But she herself inexplicably blushes and her heart beats, unable to control herself. After taking a deep breath and calming down, Mu Yang begins to gently pluck the strings. The melodious music flowed from her fingertips and slowly lingered in the room. Ming-ju was originally just concentrating on eating pig's food, and concentrating on looking at his wife. But slowly, he discovered that the blood in his body seemed to be gradually boiling. Then, all the heat in his body converged towards a certain part of his body. As for Mu Yang, who was not far away, in his eyes, every inch of her seemed to be filled with charm and enchanting. That small pink mouth that opened and closed slightly, that snow-white skin that was faintly discernible under the lapel of her robe, that plain white finger that lightly plucked the strings of the zither, it seemed to be stirring up the fire of lust within his body. Ming-ju couldn't bear it anymore. He abruptly stands up and strides towards Muyan. The sound of the zither abruptly stop. Ming-ju picks Muyan up from her seat. His tall figure tightly wrapped around her slender body. His scorching breath landed on the girl's delicate and faintly pink cheeks. Muyan, Benjun is pleased with you. He uses a hoarse voice to say the words that had been buried in the bottom of his heart for a long time. His big hand presses down on the nape of Muyan's neck, and he leans over to grab those pink lips, ruthlessly ravaging them in an instant. Ever since they parted at Jin Hong Men, he was thoroughly rejected by Muyan. Chapter 158. Mu Yang's small mouth, her breath, everything about her, it's as if it's poisonous. With just a little touch, he's unable to extricate himself, unconsciously becoming addicted. Just like countless years ago, they should have been one, and Muyan should have belonged to him. Today's Muyan is also very well behaved and obedient, which is rare. Even though she was in his arms, she did not struggle or scold him. On the contrary, his eyes were even brighter than the moonlight. However, just as Ming-ju is about to take the sweet little mouth he's been longing for into his mouth, her pink lips opened and closed slightly, spitting out a lazy and smiling voice. 5, 4, Ming-ju stares blankly, subconsciously stopping his movements. What did you say? Mu Yang, on the other hand, was full of smiles. A hint of craftiness appeared between his brows, faintly discernible as he continued, 3, 2, 1. As soon as the last word one was uttered, Ming-ju feels weak and dizzy all over. For a moment, he could not stand steadily and was about to fall. He gritted his teeth and glared at the little woman in front of him. What did you do? The smile on Muyan's beautiful face becomes more and more like a flower. Why don't you take a guess? Ming-ju's eyes redden. He reaches out, wanting to ruthlessly rub this hateful little woman into his bosom. However, Mu Yang nimbly turns around and dodges it. A charming smile appeared on her bright and beautiful face. What's the matter? Why is your face so red? Jun. Mu. Yang. Ming-ju growled. Muyan brushes back her loose black hair and says with a sweet smile, why is Jun Shong so angry? Do you feel very uncomfortable? Why don't I go to Yingchun courtyard now and call a courtesan queen over for you? With that, she leisurely turned around and was about to leave the room. Today, in order to scheme against Ming-ju, she has put in a lot of effort. Even his personal cooking, which he had not done for several years, was now being used. That seemingly dark, inedible food is actually mixed with a special draught concocted according to the prescription that Bailey Liuyin had left behind. Just taking it would not have any effect. Moreover, it was colorless and odorless, so no one would be able to detect it. But once combined with the sound of the Tianmo Qin and the skill, floating like a dream. But it can spread out the efficacy of the draught by 1,000 times. Even if Ming-ju's strength is out of the ordinary, and his body is more valiant than an ordinary person's, he still fell into the same trap. Hihi, Ming-ju dares to bully her precious son, then she would let him know why flowers were so red. However, Mu Yang's hand has just touched the doorknob. His body suddenly soared into the air, his feet leaving the ground. When she came back to her senses, she had already been thrown onto the bed. The man's strong and scorching body firmly pressed against her, not giving her any room to move. Woman, you're playing with fire. Ming-ju's voice is unbelievably hoarse. His crimson eyes are looking down at her from above, ferociously glaring at her, as if he'll swallow her into his belly in the next moment. Mu Yang's breathing has a rare hint of disorder. How did you break free from the effects of the drug? It was written in Bailey Liuin's notebook. This kind of draft is modified according to the characteristics of some medicines before she crossed over. Even the cultivators of the Shoshen continent would not be able to resist for a short period of time if they were struck by it. Mu Yang originally thought that letting Di Mingju burn with lust in this room for half an hour could be considered as taking revenge for Xiao Bao. After half an hour, the effects of the drug would naturally disappear, and there wouldn't be any side effects to the body. But she didn't think that. Chapter 159. No, that's not right. Mu Yang sees the man's flushed cheeks and his eyes are filled with lust. She thinks that this is bad. Di Mingju didn't remove the effect of the drug, rather, he directly resisted it. He wasn't completely powerless and unable to move, but he was still burning with lust. This time, she had really shot herself in the foot. Mu Yan's complexion changes again and again, just as she is about to open her mouth to say something. However, the man had already blocked her lips and tongue. A strong, overbearing, invasive aura instantly wreaked havoc in her mouth. It was as if he couldn't wait to tear her apart, swallow her whole, and assimilate her flesh and blood. And the hands that were hugging her began to be dishonest. Mu Yang's pupils suddenly constricted and she fiercely gritted her teeth. The taste of blood instantly filled his mouth. The man on top of her let out a muffled groan and regained some of his senses. However, he continued to stare at her like a wolf. Mu Yang swallows her saliva. I can give you the antidote. No. Di Mingju resolutely refuses. You are Ben Jun's antidote. Mu Yang. Believe it or not, I will castrate you, you stinking hooligan. Di Mingju's hand slowly caresses her warm and soft face. His voice is heavy, as if he's suppressing an endless tide of emotions. Woman, it was you who provoked Ben Jun first. As soon as these words come out, Mu Yan's body fiercely trembles. Memories from a long time ago came flooding back like a surging tide. The damp and dark cave, the man's body that was as hot as fire, the desire that was tormented by desire, and the tearing pain. Even after Di Mingju says these words, he also stares blankly, slightly wrinkling his brows. Why did this scene and these words feel so familiar? But in the next moment, Mu Yang's eyes have already turned cold. She flicked her slender fingers in the air. Zhang, not too far away, the Tianmo Qin seems to feel its master's summons. It suddenly floated up from the table and hovered in the air. The zither strings follow the movements of Mu Yan's fingers, playing on their own, producing a noise like a torrential rain. The sudden sound of the zither startles Di Mingju. The force restraining Mu Yan also slightly relaxes. This was the moment. Mu Yang abruptly bends her knee and ruthlessly slams it into a certain, indescribable position of the man. With a loud bang, the bed collapsed, and the dust on the beams fell down. Immediately after, Di Mingju lets out an earth-shattering roar. Jun Mu Yan, you're murdering your husband. Mu Yan is standing not too far away, holding the Tianmo Qin in her hands. Her long hair flutters without any wind, and her smile is charming, like an Avildor who can turn the whole world upside down. Where did this husband come from? Could it be that Jun Shong has forgotten that my husband is still buried in the ground? The one I'm trying to kill now is just a lecher. Di Mingju simply gnashes his teeth in hatred. Why was this woman not willing to be like other women, adore him, and submit to him? Could it be that those women in the Shoshen continent who were like bees, who tried every possible way to throw themselves at him, were all fake? But the more Mu Yan acts like this, the more he loved her, the more he loved her. Even if her clothes were neat and tidy, her expression calm and carefree. But Di Mingju can only watch as his whole body heats up. He can't wait to press this hateful woman under his body, and wantonly rub her, making her a part of his body. It's clear that the draft's effect isn't the least bit useful to him. However, he found it even harder to control himself than if he had been drugged by the most powerful aphrodisiac. Chapter 160. Di Mingju stares at the woman in front of him, and slowly takes a step forward. But as soon as he moves, the sound of the zither turns into a blade, carrying a swift and fierce momentum as it pounces towards him. Mu Yang says with a smile, "Di Mingju, are you forcing me?" Seeing the coldness in the girl's eyes, Di Mingju abruptly stops. His congested brain slowly calms down. Of course, he won't force Mu Yang. This is the woman he wants to marry as his wife, to accompany him for the rest of his life. How could he bear to force her even a little bit? What's more, what kind of person is he, Di Mingju? He can't pursue the woman he likes, so he's actually forced to the point of using force. If this gets out, would he still have the face to stand in the Shoshen world? The lust in Di Mingju's eyes slowly recedes, but the fire of unwillingness and jealousy burns up. You can't forget that man who's already dead. A man who's already dead. Can't forget. Mu Yang stares blankly at first, then she suddenly sobers up. Di Mingju is talking about her groundless lurking. Ahem. Mu Yang coughs a little guiltily. When she looks up at Di Mingju, she's already confident. He's my baby's biological father. I can't forget him, and my feelings are deeply rooted. Is there a problem? Di Mingju is simply angered to death by this woman. He's the dignified emperor of the polar domain, the #1 person in the Shoshen continent. How could he lose to a dead man? In the end, is that man more handsome than him, stronger than him, or is he better to Mu Yang than him? Mu Yang looks at the man in front of her, his eyes spitting fire, his eyes full of murderous intent. She's about to explode from anger. But even if he's angry to this point, he hasn't hurt her in the slightest. Mu Yang's heart can't help but soften a little. She sighs softly and says, Di Mingju, I don't know who you are, or what your identity is, but if you want a woman, you certainly don't lack one. Why do you have to waste your time on me, who is already married and has a child? Why do you insist on forcing me? After living again, her heart has become too hard and too ruthless. Apart from Xiao Bao and revenge, there's no room for anything else. Moreover, there was still her unbearable experiences. Even if more than 10 years had passed, it was impossible to erase them from her life. Even her strength and Di Mingju's status are like heaven and earth. They were not suitable for each other after all. Di Mingju abruptly takes a step forward, looking down at her from above. He unwaveringly glares at her. If Ben Jun insists on wasting time, insisting on insisting, Muyan is sluggish. She slightly lowers her eyes, not daring to look at the man's blazing eyes. Di Mingju, just give up. Before she could finish, she was interrupted by the man's cold voice. Jun Muyan, Ben Jun said that if you aren't tempted, then Ben Jun will pursue you until you are tempted. If your heart belongs to someone, then Ben Jun will wait until there's only me in your heart. But if you want to throw Ben Jun off and abandon me after you've started, dream on. After saying that, Di Mingju doesn't wait for Mu Yang's response, he turns around and leaves. He was afraid that if he didn't leave, he wouldn't be able to stop himself from strangling this heartless woman. Mu Yang, who was left in place, was dumbfounded for a good while before he suddenly came back to his senses. Wait, Di Mingju, tell me clearly, what have I done that you're accusing me of using you and then abandoning you? This man was so shameless. Jun Shong, you're back? How does Miss Muyan's cooking taste? You. Chapter 161. Han Yi's voice comes to an abrupt halt under Di Mingju's murderous glare. He shrinks his neck, then shrinks his neck again, desperately reducing his presence. It's over. Miss Muyan must have retaliated against Jun Shong because of the little Gong's matter. If Jun Shong finds out that he was the one who complained to Miss Muyan, then he might not be able to see tomorrow's sun. Han Yi is just thinking about how to escape without leaving a trace. Di Mingju suddenly frowns and raises his hand slightly in the air. In a split second, several glittering golden characters appear in the air. Jun Shong, someone has found traces of a Shun musician. Return quickly. Di Mingju's expression suddenly turns cold, his whole body instantly tensing up. Even though he was just angered half to death by that little bastard Muyan. However, the whereabouts and news of the Shun musicians must not be leaked in the slightest. No one knows better than Di Mingju how cruel and ruthless the entire Shoshan continent, and even the Shoshan continent, were towards the Shun musicians 1,000 years ago. And no one knows better than him how the major forces of the Shoshan continent are afraid of the Shun musicians. Although Muyan has inherited the Shun musicians' inheritance, she is still too weak at the moment. If those people know of the existence of Muyan, the successor of the Shun musician, the consequences would be unthinkable. Di Mingju says in a low voice, "In a few days, I will return to the Shoshan continent." Han Yi also completely restrains his joking manner, frowning as he asks, "Jun Shong wants to use the WN Zone Gui Yuan technique?" WN Zone Gui Yuan technique, although it is also a clone of the soul. But it can condense into a real entity, and the time it takes to descend to the Shoshan continent will be extended by a lot. But at the same time, Jun Shong's main body in the Yenwu continent will fall into a real slumber, without the slightest power to resist. Seeing Di Mingju nod, Han Yi doesn't say anything else, but bows and says, "Jun Shong, rest assured, this subordinate will not leave your side for even a step." "Right, Jun Shong, do you want to leave a message for Miss Muyan? For example, send another love letter or something? As for protecting Miss Muyan, Han Yi thinks that only in the Yenwu continent, those who want to hit on Miss Muyan should be mourned, right?" Han Yi asks this question, thinking that Di Mingju will gladly pick up his pen. At the same time, he also asked him to send a few boxes of gold, silver, and jewelry over. Who knew that when Di Mingju hears this, he would gnash his teeth and spit out 3 words. No. Must. Yes. He was going to leave that woman hanging for a few days. Let her know that this emperor's sincerity and friendship isn't something that can be casually trampled on. In short, our Jun Shong is jealous, envious, and has a fragile heart. However, Mu Yang on the other side is completely unaware that she won't be able to see a certain Sunder Jun Shong for a long time. Early the next morning, Mu Yang takes Xiao Bao out. "Baby, in order to celebrate your advancement to heaven rank middle rank, Mother will take you out to eat delicious food and buy new clothes, okay?" Mu Yang is all smiles as she pinches her son's soft little face. Xiaobao's delicate and handsome little face is taut, his expression serious as he lets Muyan tease and ravage him. Mu Yang is tickled by her son's little adult appearance. She can't help but bend down to kiss his soft cheek. But little treasure dodged with a taut face. Muyan couldn't hold it in any longer, convulsing with laughter. It attracted the attention of passers-by. Chapter 162. Seeing that Xiao Bao's face is red, Mu Yang finally stops teasing her son. Instead, she smiles and takes his little hand, continuing to walk forward. Xiao Bao's face is bright red as he thinks. Nyang Qin is good at everything, it's just that, she's too undignified. So many people are watching. However, he can't help but tighten his grip on Mu Yang's hand, his big watery eyes twinkling with star-like brilliance. It would be great if he could always be together with Nyang Qin like this. "Hey, little Gongzi, please wait." Mu Yang and Xiao Bao have just finished their meal and are preparing to go back. As they pass by Zhenbao Pavilion, the owner of Zhenbao Pavilion hurriedly runs out and stops them. Mu Yang stops and turns back with Xiao Bao, looking at the owner together. The owner promptly shows a fawning smile. "Little Gongzi, do you still remember this one? A few days ago, you bought a pair of white jade earrings in our shop. I wonder if you've already given them away." Before Xiao Bao can answer, Mu Yang is already smiling and flipping her long hair. "The owner's earrings are really exquisite, I like them very much." It turns out that the little Gongzi gave the earrings to Miss. "The little Gongzi is really good to your sister." The owner sees that Mu Yang is less than 20 years old and looks very similar to Xiao Bao, so he naturally thinks that Mu Yang is Xiao Bao's older sister. However, Xiao Bao doesn't accept it. His originally cold little face immediately turns frosty, and he grabs Mu Yang's little hand even tighter. The childish voice blurts out, "It's Nyang Qin." The owner has experienced this little ancestor's terrible coercion. He shivers in fright for a moment, and almost escapes. But hearing Xiao Bao's words, he stares blankly for a moment. Then, he comes back to his senses and promptly flatters even more. So that's how it is, the little Gongzi is really filial. Madam, you're really blessed. Mu Yang smiles warmly. Shopkeeper, no need to panic. I don't know what's the matter for you to stop us too. It's like this, the earrings that the little Gongzi bought last time are actually. Halfway through his words, the owner suddenly widens his eyes. Pointing at the white jade bracelet on Mu Yang's hand, he says in disbelief, how come this white jade bracelet is also on your hand? Mu Yang is also stunned by his words. For a moment, she doesn't know how to answer. Could it be that the white jade bracelet could not be in her hands? The boss stared blankly for a long time, but suddenly slapped his thigh, coming to a sudden realization and said, "Oh my, turns out that the godlike young master that day is a family with Miss and young master. These white jade dragon and phoenix earrings and bracelet are actually for you, miss. I was worried to death because the master who made the earrings and bracelet once said that if the dragon and phoenix were separated, it would be an ominous sign. Now that the dragon and phoenix bringing prosperity are both in Madam's hands, I am truly relieved." As he spoke, he looked at Lil Bao in a reproachful manner. "Little young master, you and that young master are clearly family. Why did you have to go against the Dragon King's temple that day? You don't know each other, do you?" At this moment, the boss no longer doubted the identity of this family. Why? Because they were too well matched. Not only was the woman in front of him extremely beautiful, but there was also a kind of grace and otherworldly aura that came from her bones. As for the man from that day, there was no need to talk about him. With a single glance, one could tell that he had been in a high position for a long time. The most obvious one was this young master. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.